Chapter 380. This time, the demonic alliance meeting was not a happy one. Both sides parted on bad terms. However, at least the people of the demonic path were certain of one thing. At this moment, both sides had put aside their prejudices and worked together to take back the demonic creation flag. After the demonic alliance meeting ended, Chu Xiu followed Mr. Lu, who was disguised as the righteous warrior Su Songtao, back to the Sword Separation Pavilion to wait for the Sword Sect meeting to begin. A month later, the World Sword Sect meeting on Floating Jade Mountain officially began. Chu Xiu also followed the crowd up the mountain. Floating Jade Mountain covered a large area. This place was originally a jade mine, so it was called Floating Jade Mountain. However, after the mine on the mountain was completely excavated, it was abandoned. This time, the World Sword Sect meeting was held here because it was spacious and could accommodate more warriors. That was why they chose Floating Jade Mountain. Chu Xiu followed the crowd to the top of Floating Jade Mountain. This place had already been built with countless pavilions by the people of the 5 major sword sections. There was also a huge training ground in the middle for the upcoming competition. As the representative of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu also had a certain status. That was why Chu Xiu's position was still relatively close to the front. As for Mr. Lu, who was disguised as Su Songtao, although he was a righteous warrior on the surface, he was only a loose cultivator. That was why he was arranged to be at the back. However, Mr. Lu gestured to Chu Xiu to act according to the circumstances. Floating Jade Mountain was bustling with noise and excitement. Sword cultivators and unaffiliated cultivators who had heard the news were quarreling and discussing. Some of them looked excited as if they had caught a chance to attend a centennial event. However, they did not know that the seemingly lively Floating Jade Mountain would soon turn into a bloodbath. What's more, they didn't know that the person they were chatting with right now was actually a Devil's Path villain. At this moment, on a high platform to the north of Floating Jade Mountain, 5 sword-wielding warriors looked down at the crowd below. There were both men and women, and their auras were frighteningly restrained. These 5 people were the leaders of the 5 great sword sects of the present era: the Forgetting Sword Hut, the Storm Sword Tomb, the Sword King City, the Hidden Sword Villa, and the Jianghu Palace. They were either sect masters or martial arts masters with real power in their sections. The sect master of the Jianghu Palace was a charming young woman dressed in palace attire. Although she wasn't young anymore, she still retained her charm. Looking at the warriors below, the Jianghu Palace's sect master said solemnly, "Will the demonic Tao really come?" Beside her, a white-robed sword-wielding martial artist with a white scarf wrapped around his head and face said, "It doesn't matter if they come or not. If the people of the demonic Tao come, we will be singing a one-man show. If the demonic Tao doesn't come, we will sing a one-man show. In any case, the result will be the same." Another middle-aged man with a square face, wearing a brocade robe, but carrying 7 swords on his back, sneered, "Your Sword King City is still very stubborn about the position of the head of the 5 great sword sects. Sword King City is far away in the western region. Even if the position of head of the 5 great sword sects falls to you, apart from reputation, what benefits does it bring you?" The white-robed martial artist narrowed his eyes. "My Sword King City wants reputation, unlike your Hidden Sword Villa. You want to have a reputation, but you don't have the chance." The people of the Hidden Sword Villa revealed a trace of anger in their eyes. Just as they were about to say something, a youth beside them said lightly, "Before the outsiders come, are you going to quarrel or fight first? Save your energy. Who knows, there might already be countless demonic Tao people among the warriors below. If you want to make a move, don't be in a hurry." The young man who spoke looked less than 30 years old. If one ignored the vicissitudes in his eyes, he was no different from the younger generation of warriors below. The strangest thing about him was his attire. The young man looked masculine and handsome, but there was a golden tattoo of a broken sword between his eyebrows. At first glance, it looked like a third eye. He wore a loose white robe and was barefooted. A sword hung crookedly from his waist. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that it was actually a broken sword. That's right. The position of the head of the 5 great sword sects has been empty for so many years. It's time to decide who's superior and who's inferior. However, we can't kill each other here. If you want to fight, you'll have plenty of opportunities later. Moreover, these demonic Dao people have been faintly showing signs of recovery recently. Their movements are getting bigger and bigger. It's time to find an opportunity to suppress them. The last person to speak was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He wore an ordinary green robe. There was nothing special about him from head to toe. He could only be described as ordinary. He was definitely the kind of person that would not stand out in a crowd. If it were not for the long sword in his hand that had an old-fashioned mahogany scabbard, no one would even think that he was a man of the pugilistic world. However, this person seemed to have a very high status in the five-sword sects. As soon as he spoke, the warriors of Sword King City and Hidden Sword Villa, who could not stand the sight of him, quietened down. Only the barefooted young man said lightly, "Your sitting forgetting sword hut is next to the moon-worshipping cult. Do you feel the pressure?" The middle-aged man nodded. That's the #1 sect of the demonic Dao, the moon-worshipping cult. Of course, there's pressure. More than 20 years ago, the moon-worshipping cult's leader, Yi Shaonan, fought with the Great Light Temple because of a poisonous insect. None of the 6 martial academies' first seats could withstand more than 3 moves from him. If it were not for the Wang Nian Zen Hall's first seat, Su Yun, and the abbot, Su Ci, who was not yet the abbot at that time, the Great Light Temple would have suffered. Now, Yi Shaonan has not fought for more than 20 years. It is said that his Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra has reached great success, and his demonic power is close to that of the Kunlun devil cult of the past. To be neighbors with such a person, only a dead person would feel no pressure. Back then we were wrong. Even if the moon-worshipping cult was not related to the Kunlun devil cult, we should have eradicated them. The same goes for the other demonic Dao sections. But in the end, not long after, the demonic Dao has begun to recover. That barefooted young man stared at the skies and spoke. Back then when we fought against the Kunlun demon sect, our Windcloud Sword Tomb also has a record of it. Even though Dugawewa is no longer around, the Kunlun demon sect is still as strong as ever, so strong that it surpasses everyone's imagination. In that battle, our righteous sects gave it our all. The eminent monks of the Buddhist sects died. The Taoist masters of the Taoist sects also died. That generation's sword emperor of our Windcloud Sword Tomb also had his sword and head broken by a devil lord of the Kunlun demon sect. After the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult, it is not that the righteous Dao sects do not want to wipe out the rest of the demonic Dao in one fell swoop, but they do not have the strength. Such a powerful Kunlun devil cult will not appear again. The moon-worshipping cult is far from being qualified. I don't know if Yi Shaonan will come this time. If he dares to come, I want to see whether his moon-worshipping cult's Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra can cover the sun and cover the moon, or my Storm Sword Tomb's divine sword eradicating abyss is unparalleled in the world. The expression of the middle-aged man from the Forgotten Sword Hut finally changed slightly. Storm Sword Tomb invited eradicating abyss out? The youth grinned, revealing a neat row of white teeth. Ever since the battle of the Kunlun devil cult, eradicating abyss has not come out for hundreds of years. Now that the World's Sword Sect Conference is a grand occasion for my sword lineage, it is time for eradicating abyss to come out and see the sun and blood. The other 4 people were shocked. Only the martial artists from the 5 major sword sects knew how terrifying that sword was. Besides the Storm Sword Tomb's foundation, no one could suppress that sword. It was called a divine sword, but it was an incomparably evil and murderous weapon. At this time, the martial artists below did not feel the aura of an impending storm. For them, as long as they could hear a martial arts grandmaster-level powerhouse speak, even if it was just a sentence, it would be enough for them to benefit immensely. The seats were arranged by the Forgotten Sword Hut, and they were arranged according to the approximate positions of West Chu, Eastern Qi, and Northern Yen. Chu Xiu was someone from the Guangzhong torture room, which was located between the 3 countries, so his seat was arranged between West Chu and Northern Yen, a bit further away from Eastern Qi. The martial artist from the Forgotten Sword Hut who arranged a seat for Chu Xiu seemed to be very intelligent. He knew that Chu Xiu had once slaughtered in Eastern Qi and was not well received by the martial artists of Eastern Qi, so he specially arranged for Chu Xiu to be placed between West Chu and Northern Yan. However, he did not expect that besides Eastern Qi, there were also many people from Northern Yan and West Chu who did not like Chu Xiu. Not long after Chu Xiu took his seat, people from other sects came over. When one of the people from the new sect saw Chu Xiu, his body stiffened and he paused. Someone behind him said in surprise, "Eldertson, why aren't you walking? Take a seat." Chu Xiu looked back and saw Teacher Tsun of the Ba Mountain Sword sect and a few other disciples of the Ba Mountain Sword sect walking over. Their seats were next to Chu Xiu. Seeing that the person who had come was Teacher Tsun, Chu Xiu grinned at Teacher Tsun, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. It was very bright. "So it is Elder Tsun. Last time, Elder Tsun ran very quickly. For the first time, I know that the Ba Mountain Sword sect is not just skilled in sword techniques, but also in lightness skills." Teacher Tsun's face flushed red at Chu Xiu's words. He had been a scholar in the past. Last time in the Tower of Heaven, he had lost face. Originally, he had put aside the grievances between him and Chu Xiu. As long as he stood on Chu Xiu's side at that time, 1/3 of the things in the Tower of Heaven would be his. Unfortunately, Teacher Tsun had made the wrong choice in the end. He chose to stand on Xiahou Wujiang's side. In the end, he only obtained half of the fierce beast's heart and fled dejectedly. Thinking of this matter, he still felt pain in his heart. The pain of regret was even more painful than when he learned that his disciple Zhang Baitao had been killed by Chu Xiu. At this time, a Unity of Heaven realm martial artist behind Teacher Tsun said in surprise, "Elder Tsun, who is this friend? Do you know him?" This time, the sect leader of the Ba Mountain Sword sect did not come. The Ba Mountain Sword sect was not strong and only had one martial arts grandmaster. Naturally, they could not ignore the sect just to come to the World Sword Sect Conference to watch the show. Therefore, only Teacher Tsun and another Unity of Heaven realm martial artist came with a few young disciples to watch the show. Chu Xiu smiled at the martial artist and said, "Well said. I am Chu Xiu, an old friend of Elder Tsun." Chapter 381. Of course, the people of Ba Mountain Sword sect had heard of Chu Xiu's name. This name had been spread by Teacher Tsun. After all, one of his personal disciples had died. No matter what, he had to report it to the sect. But a sect at the level of Ba Mountain Sword sect would not mobilize their power for an ordinary disciple and go on a grand scale to avenge him. They had many disciples. If they went to great lengths to avenge him, they would not just lose one disciple, but many more. So if Chu Xiu was a nobody, it would not matter. But in the end, Chu Xiu was a torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room. The sect leader of Ba Mountain Sword sect could only say his condolences to Teacher Tsun. But looking at Teacher Tsun's expression, he was actually not that sad. But looking at Chu Xiu in front of him, the Ba Mountain Sword sect warrior could not help but want to explode. Previously, he could not see Chu Xiu, but now that Chu Xiu was here, if he continued to pretend to be deaf and mute, he would seem too cowardly. But before he could say anything, he was pulled back by Teacher Tsun. Teacher Tsun immediately whispered a few words into his ear and pulled him to the side to sit down. In reality, while Teacher Tsun's strength was not great, and he was somewhat hypocritical, in reality, Teacher Tsun knew his limits. He knew his own strength, and he also knew the strength of Ba Mountain Sword sect. If he fought against Chu Xiu, he would only be at a disadvantage. So while the one who died was his disciple, Teacher Tsun did not want to continue fighting with Chu Xiu. This was not cowardice, this was reason. He, Teacher Tsun, had roamed the martial world for so many years. He had relied on this reason to become an elder of Ba Mountain Sword sect. Otherwise, he would have been killed many times over. And now, seeing that Teacher Tsun knew his limits, Chu Xiu could not be bothered to continue targeting him. He was a reasonable person sometimes. It was Teacher Tsun who had a grudge against him, not him who had a grudge against Teacher Tsun. Chu Xiu could naturally tell that Teacher Tsun was not playing a game of enduring humiliation. Instead, he really did not want to avenge his past grudges. At this time, a voice came from behind Chu Xiu. "Brother Chu, we meet again." Chu Xiu turned around and saw that it was Xie Xiaolu from the World Alliance. Besides Xie Xiaolu were a few Unity of the World realm martial artists. Clearly, They were also experts from the World Alliance. Xie Xiaolu's strength was right there. He was just a spectator, not a representative like Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "I knew you would come. The 5 great sword sects will hold the World Sword Sect Conference in West Chu, so your World Alliance will definitely be invited." "That's right, your World Alliance's alliance leader Chen didn't come." Xie Xiaolu shook his head and said, "The World Alliance has so many things to deal with, how could my master have the time to come here and play with them? And according to my master's personality, if those so-called Sword Path Grandmasters say something wrong during their sermon, my master will probably go up and argue with them. In the end, it's even possible for them to fight." Chu Xiu rubbed his chin. He seemed to have heard some rumors that the World Alliance's alliance leader Qin Qingdi was indeed not someone who was easy to talk to. At this time, Xie Xiaolu walked closer to Chu Xiu and said in a low voice, "Brother Chu, if the World Sword Sect Conference ends early or if something happens, you should immediately leave Floating Jade Mountain. Don't stay here any longer." Chu Xiu revealed a strange look in his eyes and said, "What news did you hear?" Xie Xiaolu nodded and said, "My master said that this World Sword Sect Conference doesn't seem to be peaceful. The 5 great sword sects' actions are provoking the demonic path. I don't think the demonic path will let this matter go. In any case, my master said that if it were him, he would definitely make a move and directly smash this Floating Jade Mountain to smithereens. So, our World Alliance is only here to watch the show. After watching the show, we'll leave immediately. It's best if we don't get involved in the matter between the demonic path and the 5 great sword sects." Chu Xiu nodded, but he was thinking in his heart, as expected, the other sects are not stupid. These people also know what the 5 great sword sects are preparing to do. However, this is an internal matter of the 5 great sword sects. Moreover, the demonic path has been showing signs of revival these years, so they have to suppress it. So, no one stopped it. Chu Xiu asked, "Since Alliance leader Chen already knows about this, does he still dare to let you go up Floating Jade Mountain?" Xie Xiaolu said matter-of-factly, "Why not? This is a fight between the demonic path and the 5 great sword sects. The others have no intention of interfering. Our World Alliance is just watching from the side and has no intention of making a move." Chu Xiu was silent. It seemed that Qin Qingdi had guessed wrongly. This time, the demonic path would indeed act, but if they did, it would be a major move. He had thought that this time, Floating Jade Mountain was only a matter between the sword path and the demonic path. He did not know that in the end, this matter had evolved into a war between the righteous path and the demonic path. Of course, even this had nothing to do with the World Alliance. Because the World Alliance did not belong to the righteous path, they also did not belong to the demonic path. So when the two sides fought, no one would provoke a neutral faction like the World Alliance. At this time, Xie Xiaolu also looked at Teacher Tsun and pursed his lips. "Isn't this the elder of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect who escaped last time? What, have you settled your grudge with him?" In the time that Xie Xiaolu had known Chu Xiu, he had more or less understood Chu Xiu's personality. He was tough, strong, and had a hint of madness. Right now, there were only 2 kinds of people who had a grudge with Chu Xiu. One was the living that could not be killed, and the other was the dead that were already dead. Right now, the people of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect were living peacefully with Chu Xiu. This made Xie Xiaolu feel that it was incredible. Chu Xiu corrected, "It is they who have a grudge with me, not the other way around." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Xie Xiaolu immediately understood what Chu Xiu meant. So the people of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect were afraid. But Xie Xiaolu felt that this was normal. He was in West Chu and naturally knew what the people of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect were like. Among the top sects in the world, factions like the Ba Mountain Sword Sect were at the bottom because they only had one martial arts grandmaster. Not only that, but this martial Dao grandmaster's strength was not too strong, and there were no outstanding figures in the next generation, which was very embarrassing. Once there was a gap in one generation of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect, the sect would immediately fall apart, and then it would be completely removed from the Jianghu songs. So usually, sects like the Ba Mountain Sword Sect would act like cowards, and act like top sects with some small sections. But in front of some troublesome opponents, they did not mind surrendering. At this time, there was a hubbub in the crowd behind them. Chu Xiu raised an eyebrow and said, "Important people have come up the mountain?" Xie Xiaolu shook his head and said, "The important people have come to Floating Jade Mountain ahead of time. The ones coming up at this time are only the younger generation." As he spoke, Chu Xiu and Xie Xiaolu instinctively looked in the direction of the newcomer. Chu Xiu frowned. Xie Xiaolu rarely smiled and said, "Ba Mountain Sword Sect's grievance with you has been resolved, but this person is not. I heard that in the Northern Yen, if someone mentions your name, this person will not be able to control his demeanor." The person who had just come up the mountain was a handsome young man with an extraordinary presence. He wore a gilded robe and was surrounded by countless warriors. This person could be considered an old acquaintance of Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu had not seen him for a long time. This person was Nie Donglu of the Morgue village. Just as Xie Xiaolu had said, the grievance between Chu Xiu and Nie Donglu had not been resolved. Previously, when Chu Xiu stole the treasure from Nie Donglu had sent people to kill him. At that time, Chu Xiu had no one to rely on and was in a sorry state. Chu Xiu would not forget this grievance. Chu Xiu stared at Nie Donglu for a while and suddenly said, "Nie Donglu has entered the 5 Qis returning to the origin realm?" Chu Xiu vaguely remembered that the last time Nie Donglu's news came, he was only a physical invulnerability expert. Then he went into seclusion because of something, and his ranking on the Longhu leaderboard fell out of the top 10. Now he has actually entered the 5 Qis returning to the origin realm. Is it because Nie Donglu's talent is unparalleled, or did he encounter some opportunity? Xie Xiaolu looked at Chu Xiu in surprise and said, "You don't know." "What should I know?" Chu Xiu asked back. Xie Xiaolu was a little speechless. "You are a Northern Yen martial artist. Don't you care about what happened in the Northern Yen recently?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "People in Jianghu are like duckweed. How can I care about my background? I can't even take care of the things in front of me. How can I have the leisure to care about the Northern Yen?" Xie Xiaolu shook his head again. Mo Tianlin always said that he was indifferent. It must be natural for him to shave his head and join a Buddhist sect to meditate. But now it seemed that Chu Xiu was even more indifferent than him. Looking at Nie Donglu in the crowd, Xie Xiaolu said in a low voice, "Nie Donglu obtained an opportunity. But this opportunity is not an item, but a person. Some time ago, it was said that Nie Donglu was defeated by a woman. This matter was probably too much for someone as proud as Nie Donglu, so he put down everything and went into seclusion. Later, because there were some things to take care of in the morgue, but Nie Renlong wasn't there, Nie Donglu had to go. But unexpectedly, he met the great Northern Yen Jianghu Stone General Han Baxian and was taken in as a personal disciple. A martial arts grandmaster for a father and a martial arts grandmaster for a master. Is this opportunity big enough?" Chu Xiu looked at Nie Donglu in surprise. This guy's luck was really good. He just went out for a trip and he was able to have a martial arts grandmaster as his master. And Han Baxian wasn't just any martial arts grandmaster. Although he didn't belong to any sect, he was very famous in the Northern Yen. He was one of the strongest among the martial arts grandmasters. Chapter 382. Stone General Han Baxian's nickname was quite interesting. He had indeed been a general in his early years and had even become the general of the Stone Forest Army that guarded the western part of Yen. He was considered a core force in the Northern Yen military. At that time, Han Baxian was even valued by a big shot in the Northern Yen military. He was prepared to take him under the command of the 5th Army and make him a deputy general. However, Han Baxian was obsessed with martial arts and despised being in the military for interfering with his training. Therefore, he resigned from his position as the general of the Stone Forest Army and focused on training. He went to the cold lands of the far north or the far west desert to polish his martial arts. He was more famous there than in the military. Rumor had it that Han Baxian's personality was domineering and aggressive, and he was even a bit of a martial arts fanatic. Logically speaking, his personality should not be compatible with Nie Donglu, but now Han Baxian had taken Nie Donglu as his disciple, which made Chu Xiu feel a bit strange. Nie Donglu was from the northern Yen, so he was naturally assigned to the northern Yen side. It just so happened that Chu Xiu's position was not close to eastern Qi. To his left was western Chu, and to his right was northern Yen. When Nie Donglu looked over, he naturally saw Chu Xiu standing there. Nie Dongliu's expression changed slightly, but he still revealed a smile. Nie Dongliu's attitude towards Chu Xiu was very strange. In the beginning, he did not see Chu Xiu as an opponent. To him, Chu Xiu was only a small obstacle. If he could kill him, he would. If he could not, he would not waste too much effort to hunt down Chu Xiu. Therefore, after obtaining the treasure at Luyang Mountain, Nie Donglu did not even use the power of the morgue to hunt down Chu Xiu. He only gathered some sects that wanted to curry favor with the morgue. When Chu Xiu left the northern Yen, he quickly became famous in the Jianghu like a dragon returning to the sea. He even jumped to the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. It would be a lie to say that Nie Donglu wasn't jealous of the situation. Nie Donglu naturally felt uncomfortable as he looked at the loose cultivator he could crush to death in the past, who had now become a torture officer in the Guangzhong torture room and a young elite ranked above him on the Longhu list. Even so, Nie Donglu would only feel uncomfortable. He wasn't a weak-minded person like Sword King City's Lin Kaiyun, who would be affected by such a small matter. What really affected Nie Donglu was not himself, but the rumors outside. People in Jianghu always liked to spread gossip. Some people just couldn't bear to see others doing well. The more unlucky someone was, the happier they would be. Even though Nie Donglu had countless friends outside and appeared to be very humble, polite, and loyal, there were still some people who just wanted to see him suffer. So, as soon as the news about Chu Xiu reached the northern Yen side, there would immediately be people in the northern Yen side saying that Nie Donglu had let Chu Xiu go, and now he was being stepped on. Anyway, it was as ugly as it could be. These rumors had already affected Nie Dongliu's reputation to a certain extent. He couldn't ignore it. There was only one way to solve it. It wasn't to kill those people who were gossiping, but to defeat Chu Xiu. There were too many of the former. Not to mention the current power of the Morgue Village. Even if the Morgue Village had the power of the Great Light Temple, they still wouldn't be able to kill all of them. So, the most reliable way was the latter. As long as Chu Xiu was defeated or killed by him, everything would be solved. It was simple and direct. In the past, Nie Donglu liked to use schemes and look down on those simple-minded boorish people. In his opinion, such boorish people would be killed by others sooner or later, no matter how strong they were. But ever since he was defeated by that woman, Nie Donglu suffered some setbacks. In the face of absolute power, his schemes couldn't be put to good use. Nie Donglu said he was the young master of the Morgue Village, and someone said, "You lost to a woman." Nie Donglu said he was a hero on the Longhu list, and someone said, "You lost to a woman." Nie Donglu said he had already started training in isolation, and someone said, "You lost to a woman." There was no way to clear his name of being defeated in public, and there was no way to justify it. It was simple and direct. It also made Nie Donglu realize that sometimes, absolute power was more important than schemes. After that, Nie Donglu got to know his current master, Han Bashin. This famous martial arts master of the northern Yen world was extremely wild in both strength and personality. He also taught Nie Donglu many things other than martial arts. When one's strength reached a certain level, it was enough to destroy any conspiracy. In the past, Nie Donglu had put the cart before the horse. Now, Nie Donglu finally realized that it was right to rely on schemes and brains, but the most important thing a warrior should rely on was their fists. Thinking of this, Nie Donglu walked over to Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "Brother Chu, long time no see." Everyone present looked at Chu Xiu and Nie Donglu. These two were heroes on the Longhu list, and everyone had heard of the feud between them. However, in the past few years, Chu Xiu had been in Guangzhong, and Nie Donglu had also been training in isolation in the northern Yen. The two had not had many opportunities to interact. Now that they were in time for the World Sword Sect Conference, were they preparing to warm up before the conference? Chu Xiu also looked at Nie Donglu and said calmly, "Yes, long time no see. It feels like things have remained the same, but people have changed. Brother Nie, you have changed a lot." At the moment, Chu Xiu's attitude was calm, and there was no sign that he had a great feud with Nie Donglu. The two of them seemed like old friends catching up. Nie Donglu looked straight at Chu Xiu and took a step forward. The aura around him became extremely serious. In the past, Chu Xiu had fought with Nie Donglu. Compared to the Nie Donglu of the past, the aura around him was completely different. It could be imagined how much he had changed in this period of time. People change, don't they? But what has already happened will not change. Brother Chu, it is time to end the feud between us. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "I was the one who was chased miserably back then. It seems like I should be the one saying this. The World Sword Sect Conference is a good place. With so many people watching, it is enough for us to settle the past feud. Of course, looking at you, you probably can't wait and want to make a move now? Alright, I will accompany you to the end." An extremely oppressive aura was released from Chu Xiu's body. It was not weaker than Nie Dongliu's at all. In fact, the strong killing intent was even stronger than Nie Dongliu's. Since leaving the northern Yen, Chu Xiu had always been growing through killing. On the other hand, Nie Donglu had been training in seclusion and training with his master. Although his cultivation level had improved quickly, the number of people he had killed was not as much as Chu Xiu. Just when both sides thought that the two of them would definitely fight, Nie Dongliu's aura suddenly dissipated. Like a spring breeze and rain, it dissipated the killing intent on Chu Xiu's body. Nie Donglu laughed and said, "Brother Chu, I was just joking. Did you take it seriously? I don't care about grudges anymore. If there's a chance later, we can have a spar. However, the World Sword Sect Convention is about to begin. If we fight here, aren't we not giving face to the 5 major sword sects?" Chu Xiu suddenly sneered and said, "I realized that I was wrong before. You, young Master Nie, haven't changed at all." After saying that, Chu Xiu sat down and ignored Nie Donglu. Nie Donglu did the same and went to his seat. The two of them did not say another word. Previously, Chu Xiu thought that Nie Donglu had become more straightforward and wanted to solve the problem with his fists. He did not expect him to still be the same. In the past, the one who had been hunted was Chu Xiu. In the end, Nie Donglu said that he didn't care about grudges. Didn't that make him seem petty? Moreover, the one who had released his aura to provoke was Nie Donglu. In the end, he said that he was joking and Chu Xiu became the petty one. This person's mouth was full of lies, and his schemes and calculations were already embedded in his bones. Every word he said had to be at least a little bit of an advantage. However, Chu Xiu did not care. He did not have a good reputation in Eastern Qi or the entire Jianghu. Chu Xiu did not need a good reputation. Now that he was called petty and calculative, it would not hurt Chu Xiu. As for why Nie Donglu did not make a move in the end, the reason was very simple. It was because he was not confident. If Nie Donglu was confident, he would not care about the reputation of the 5 great sword sects. He would have defeated Chu Xiu on the spot or even killed him to regain his reputation. After all, he was the young master of Honor Village. He was already dead. The 5 major sword sects would not let him die with them. Nie Donglu did not make a move because he was not confident. Based on the aura that Chu Xiu had released, he was not confident that he could beat Chu Xiu on the spot. So, he had to wait. He had to wait until he understood Chu Xiu, or until Chu Xiu was exhausted and injured. Han Baxian had taught him to use his fists to solve problems, but Nie Donglu did not forget his brain and calculations. Wouldn't it be safer to crush the opponent under the premise that he had absolute confidence in winning? Xie Xiaolu sat next to Chu Xiu and asked in a low voice, "Are you going to make a move later?" A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes as he said, "Even if I don't make a move, the young Manor Lord won't let this go. I want revenge, and he wants his reputation. We will have to fight." Xie Xiaolu nodded. "Be careful. I have not met Nie Donglu, but my master has evaluated his father, Nie Renlong. Nie Renlong is not weak, but he is not too strong either. But what makes Nie Renlong truly frightens people is his methods. Most of the 6 gangs were born in the wilderness. The ones who can walk to the end and have the greatest potential, other than West Chu's World Alliance, are the Northern Yen Memorial Village. Chapter 383. It wasn't hard to deal with a reckless warrior who only knew how to fight and kill, and it wasn't hard to deal with a guy who only knew how to plot in the dark. What was really difficult was to combine the two, and Ye Donglu was like that now. Chu Xiu knew that the ghost village was not to be trifled with. However, the enmity had already been formed, so it had to be resolved sooner or later. At the foot of floating Jade Mountain, almost everyone who was supposed to be there had arrived. The disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut had already come out to maintain order, ready to wait for the World Sword Sect Conference to officially begin. But at that moment, an even louder clamor came from the foot of the mountain. Clearly, the person who had come was even more famous than Ye Donglu. Chu Xiu turned around and saw that the people who had come were people from the Great Light Temple, Sabodhi Monastery, and some other top sections. These major sects were all invited by the 5 sword sects to attend the ceremony. Top sects of the Jianghu of this level never lacked martial Dao grandmasters. For example, in the Great Light Temple's 3 great Zen halls and the 6 great martial academies, every first seat had the strength of a martial Dao grandmaster. The people from the Great Light Temple were the head of the Vajra department, Su Yen, and the head of the Kongji Zen Hall, Su Du. The martial institution and the Zen Hall had each sent one person, which was enough to give face to the 5 major sword sections. The first seat of the Kongji Zen Hall, Su Du, was a middle-aged monk who looked to be in his 40s. Compared to the other monks of the Temple of Great Light, Su Du appeared to be a little sloppy. He swayed as he walked, and without his monk robes, he looked like an old ruffian on the streets. He did not look like an accomplished monk at all. However, among these people, his position was the highest. The other warriors of the Great Light Temple could only stand behind him. This made the few disciples of the Great Light Temple behind him cover their faces with their hands, looking embarrassed. They really could not understand why the temple would send Uncle Master Shudu here. This was simply affecting the image of the Great Light Temple. Su Yen tugged at Su Du's arm and whispered, "Senior brother Su Du, mind your image." Su Du glanced at him and said indifferently, "Image? I'm not senior brother Abbot. What image do I need? Back then, my master gave me the Dharma name of Su Du. I have not wasted my time, and I have not let him down. What's more, the Buddha has said, everything is like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, and a shadow, like dew or like lightning. I have Buddha in my heart, so who can say that I have tarnished the reputation of the Buddhist sect? A Buddha with a gold-plated body and a dignified appearance is a Buddha, but a clay and wooden body that protects the poor people is not a Buddha. Junior brother, you are too obsessed with appearances. It is not a good thing to be too attached to these appearances. Buddha is in your heart, not on your kasaya." Su Yen was rendered speechless by Su Du's words, and he rolled his eyes. The 6 great martial institutions cultivated martial arts, while the 3 great Zen halls cultivated both Zen and martial arts. In terms of understanding of various Buddhist scriptures, they were far inferior to the 3 great Zen halls in terms of eloquence. Although Su Yen knew that these were all excuses and sophistry, when he heard it, it seemed to make sense. He looked at the Buddhist disciples behind him and saw that they were all admiring Uncle Master Su Du, who was indeed an eminent monk of his generation. Seeing this, Su Yen was instantly helpless. He was deeply worried about the future of the Great Light Temple. At this moment, Huijin, who was behind him, suddenly stiffened and paused. "Huijin, what's wrong?" Su Yen asked. Because of Ming Chen's death, Huijin, who was not young to begin with, had recently aged even more. Therefore, Su Yen had brought Huijin to the World Sword Sect Conference as a way to relax. Following Huijin's gaze, Su Yen also saw Chu Xiu. This made him frown. He did not expect Chu Xiu to be here. After all, the World Sword Sect Conference was a grand event of the entire pugilistic world. It was a rather serious one. Therefore, the people who could represent their respective factions were definitely the mainstays of their respective factions. Although Chu Xiu's battle prowess was comparable to the unity of heaven and man realm, in reality he was still at the 5 Qis origin realm. His experience in the Guanzhong torture room was far from that of the other disciplinary officers and the head of the arrest department. Therefore, Su Yen would never have expected Chu Xiu to be here. Su Yan looked at Huizhen worriedly. Just as he was about to say something, he saw Huizhen turn his head indifferently and wave his hand. Uncle Master, I'm fine. Let's go. Huizhen knew that it was difficult for Su Yan. He did not want to put this Uncle Master, who had always treated him well, in a difficult position. However, some monks from the Vajrayard were furious. Chu Xiu killed our senior brother Ming Chen and Uncle Master Huizhen. Are we just going to let this matter go? The monks from the Vajrayard cultivated together. These monks were not Huizhen's disciples, but they were similarly furious over Ming Chen's death. Some of the grudges in the Jianghu were actually unreasonable. Even the Great Light Temple could not stand on the side of reason. In any case, in the eyes of these warriors, Ming Chen was their senior brother. Although he was hot-tempered and easily angered to outsiders, he took good care of them internally. He was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Now that Ming Chen had been killed, they did not care whether Ming Chen had sought trouble with Chu Xiu first or not. As long as they knew that Ming Chen had died at the hands of Chu Xiu, that was enough. Huizhen stopped these people and waved his hand. He said in a low voice, "Don't be rash. I also want to take revenge for Ming Chen, but revenge depends on the time and place. What you are doing now is ruining the reputation of the Great Light Temple. You must consider the bigger picture." Among the warriors present, Huizhen, who had lost his disciple, was the calmest. Although the others were somewhat indignant, as Ming Chen's master, Huizhen, had already said that this matter would be over for now. What else could they say? They could only suppress the anger in their hearts and pretend that they did not see Chu Xiu. When Shudu, who was walking at the front, saw this scene, he could not help but shake his head. He said, "Revenge breeds revenge. When will there be an end to it? Grudges cannot be suppressed. The more you suppress it, the more it will rebound. At that time, it will probably cause even more unexpected consequences. If we want to completely end this grudge, we must completely kill the other party." Senior brother Shuyun made a mistake this time. For the sake of a favor, he did not let the Great Light Temple take action. However, this deepened the grudge. No one can say for sure how it will develop. Su Yan frowned and said, "Since you know, why didn't you tell senior brother Shuyun?" Shudu looked at Su Yan like he was looking at an idiot. Based on senior brother Shuyun's personality, once he has set his mind on something, even if the abbot speaks, it will not be easy for him to change his mind, much less something like this. I don't want to deal with senior brother Shuyun, so if something like this happens again in the future and you want to speak, I'll remind you to do it yourself. Su Yan was instantly speechless. Actually, Su Yan did not even think about dealing with senior brother Shuyun. Otherwise, he would not have agreed to Shuyun's request so easily back then. Shuyun's position in the Great Light Temple was very special. It could be said that he was second only to the abbot. He was even an existence that could faintly rival the abbot, Su Ci. Furthermore, Shuyun's personality was a little polarizing. On the outside, he was the Great Light Temple's Wangyan Zen Hall's first seat. He had a profound cultivation in the Buddhist Dharma, and he was an eminent monk with a peaceful personality. However, on the other hand, almost only the people of the Great Light Temple knew about him. He could be said to be paranoid and terrifying. Sometimes, even if the martial artists of the Great Light Temple had to deal with the abbot, they would not want to deal with Shuyun. After the people of the Great Light Temple took their seats, they looked forward. Not a single one of them looked at Chu Xiu, even though Chu Xiu was their Great Light Temple's enemy. This was also a habit formed by the precepts of the Great Light Temple. Every move was strictly executed. It was very strict. Xie Shaolu saw the actions of the people from the Great Light Temple and said with slight surprise, "Did the Guanzhong torture room help you settle the matter of you killing Ming Chen?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Although the Guanzhong torture room does not have a long history, it still has some foundation. I only killed Ming Chen from the Jianghu department, not the most outstanding disciple of the Great Light Temple, Wisdom King Zhongxian. The Guanzhong torture room can still suppress it." "All right. Did Wisdom King Zhongxian not come to the World Sword Sect conference this time?" Xie Shaolu shook his head and said, "I heard that Wisdom King Zhongxian had already stepped into the unity of heaven and man realm a few years ago. You can't kill him even if you wanted to. This World Sword Sect Conference is mainly prepared for sword cultivators. If Wisdom King Zhong Xian comes, will he go? As a hero ranked in the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger list, if Zhong Xian doesn't go, he will be ridiculed as a coward. But if he goes, he will have the intention of provoking the major sword sections. So this time, Zhong Xian didn't come at all. Little Celestial Master Zhang Qingzhen also didn't come. The top 5 of the Dragon and Tiger list is only Chief Sword Fang Qishao. Oh right, you New Palace's Yan Fian is also here. The final winner of this World Sword Sect Conference will most likely be Fang Qishao. As for the others, they will more or less get some benefits. But among the younger generation of martial artists, when it comes to sword cultivation, no one can beat Fang Qishao. Just as Xie Xiaolu was discussing Fang Qishao, the World Sword Sect Conference was about to begin. Everyone had already taken their seats, but at this time, a youth walked out from Sword King City's side and walked straight towards Chu Xiu. The youth was dressed in white warrior clothes, but he didn't wear the Sword King City's white headscarf. His appearance couldn't be considered too handsome, but he gave people a very natural and comfortable feeling. A simple and unadorned sword with a black hilt was wrapped in sackcloth and hung loosely on his back. It didn't match the temperament of an ordinary martial artist from Sword King City. This young man seemed ordinary and did not attract as much attention as Nie Donglu. However, when he moved, everyone present could not help but look at him, as if there was some mysterious attraction on this young man's body that attracted everyone's attention. Xie Xiaolu was surprised and said, "Chief Swords Fang Qishao. You also have a grudge with Fang Qishao?" Chu Xiu looked at the approaching Fang Qishao and said with an unchanging expression, "I don't have a grudge with Fang Qishao, but I don't have a good relationship with Sword King City." At this time, Fang Qishao had already walked in front of Chu Xiu and grinned at Chu Xiu. He had a gentle temperament. "My name is Young Master Fang, not Young Master Fang. You should have heard of me." Chu Xiu also had an indifferent expression as he said, "Chu Xiu, the Xiu that says everything is over. Since you've come to find me, you should naturally know of me." Chapter 384. Fang Qishao is very famous in Jianghu. He is ranked 3rd on the Longhu list and is known as a sword Dao genius rarely seen in a millennium. He started learning the sword at the age of 7 and learned all 4 major sword halls of Sword King City in 5 years. Even the sword instructors of Sword King City are ashamed of their inferiority. Chu Xiu also has a lot of enmity with Sword King City. Sword King City's outstanding disciple Lin Kaiyan, second only to Fang Qishao, had his state of mind damaged because of him. Moreover, Sword King City's elite disciple Brilliant Sword Fei Mo also had his cultivation crippled. Therefore, Chu Xiu wasn't surprised that Sword King City came looking for trouble with him. Just when Chu Xiu thought that Fang Qishao would issue a challenge in a domineering manner, Fang Qishao showed a helpless expression and said, "You should know why I came looking for you. In fact, I don't want to. I'm actually very lazy. Aside from practicing the sword, I don't want to do anything else. Lin Kane has always been envious of my handsomeness, elegance, majesty, and unbridled nature. In Sword King City, he always spoke ill of me. He's very stingy, so I don't want to take revenge for him. There's also Firm. That guy is famous for having a foul mouth and giving himself such an unlucky name. I've already said it before. Who knows, maybe one day someone will find him an eyesore and conveniently cripple him. Now it seems that I have the potential to become a divination grandmaster. Right, what do you think about me going to Longhu Mountain to learn divination from those ox noses? I'm very familiar with Zhang Qingzhen. Seeing that we're so familiar, Celestial Master Mansion shouldn't refuse me, right? I'm sorry, I digressed. What I meant was that although I'm too lazy to avenge them, the people of my sect are forcing me to seek justice for that idiot. After all, I'm the most handsome disciple of this generation in Sword King City, so I have no choice but to shoulder this heavy burden. But I don't want to fight this kind of meaningless battle. How about this? Later on in the arena, I will use my sword 3 times and you will use your saber 3 times. Then, you will pretend to be no match for me and we will both save our strength. What do you think? After all, you're ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard and I'm ranked 3rd. This proves that in terms of handsomeness, I'm better than you. It's not embarrassing for you to lose to me. I'll treat you to a meal after this. What do you think? Fang Qishao's mouth was even faster than his sword. After he finished speaking, both Chu Xiu and Xie Xiaolu were dumbstruck. Who would have thought that the world-famous chief sword master Fang Qishao, who was known as the rare genius swordsman in 1,000 years, Fang Qishao, was actually a chatterbox and a joker? Xie Xiaolu was even more speechless. Who said that the tiger and dragon list was ranked according to one's handsomeness? If it was ranked that way, then Lu Fengxian would definitely be ranked first. Chu Xiu's ability to accept was a bit stronger. Geniuses always had some differences from ordinary people. It was just that this Fang Qishao was different from ordinary people in a big way. Seeing that Chu Xiu did not speak, Fang Qishao deliberately moved closer and widened his eyes. Don't think that I'm joking. I'm serious. If you don't believe me, look at my sincere eyes. I, Fang Qishao, am a man of my word. I never lie. The surrounding people could not listen to him at this time, especially the sword cultivators. Among the young disciples of the 5 major sword sects, the disciples of Hidden Sword Villa were relatively mediocre. Although the Forgetting Sword Hut and Storm Sword Mound had deep foundations, they had high requirements for their young disciples. Therefore, some of their disciples were not even released to roam the Jianghu. As for the Yu Nu Palace's Yan Fian, she was a woman. Therefore, all the young sword cultivators in the world regarded Fang Qishao as their idol. However, now that they saw their idol in such a state, they felt like their dreams had collapsed and their hearts were shattered. On the Sword King City side, a middle-aged unity of heaven and man realm martial artist shouted angrily, "Fang Qishao, get the hell back here. If you dare say another word of nonsense today, I will immediately report to the sect and you will be confined for a year." The middle-aged martial artist covered his face, looking as if he had lost all face. He simply wanted to cry but had no tears. Look at Dragon Tiger Mountain's little heavenly master, Zhang Qingzhen. Not only did he have the strength of a little heavenly master, but he also had the bearing of a little heavenly master. Anyone who had seen Zhang Qingzhen would praise him. Look at Great Brightness Temple's Wisdom King, Zhong Xian. He had been cultivating in the bitter cold of the far north all these years. When he came out to roam Jianghu, he exterminated evil and was praised by the people of Jianghu. Finally, he looked back at Fang Qishao. How did their Sword King City cultivate such a thing? Although Fang Qishao's talent in Sword Dao was indeed peerless, he was worried about Sword King City's future. Was it really the right decision to hand Sword King City over to Fang Qishao? Fang Qishao shrugged helplessly at Chu Xiu and turned back to the Sword King City's side. The Sword King City's martial artist glared fiercely at Fang Qishao and said, "The World Sword Sect Conference is the key to our Sword King City's ascension to the top of the 5 major sword sects. Put away your mischievous look. Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian are not here. You are the leader of the younger generation. You must fight for our Sword King City's prestige. You are not allowed to hold back or throw the game. Do you hear me?" Fang Qishao nodded listlessly. When the martial artist saw Fang Qishao's appearance, he couldn't help getting angry and shouted again, "Speak." 7th young master Fang pointed at his mouth and said with an aggrieved expression, "Didn't you say you wouldn't let me speak? If I speak, you'll go to master and complain about me. I don't want to be grounded." The martial artist covered his face and sat down. He waved his hand dispiritedly and didn't want to talk to Fang Qishao anymore. On Chu Xiu's side, Xie Xiaolu still couldn't react. Fang Qishao, who was ranked 3rd on the Longhu list, turned out to be like this. This completely subverted his imagination. At this moment, a deafening clang of a sword rang out in the middle of the training grounds. It shook the heavens and the earth, immediately causing the noise to stop. The ordinary-looking martial arts grandmaster from the sword hut walked onto the training grounds in the middle of the training grounds. He cupped his hands at the people around him and said loudly, "Welcome to the World Sword Sect Conference, everyone. If there is anything lacking in the hospitality, please forgive me." Seeing this ordinary-looking middle-aged martial artist stand out, there was another round of discussion below. This extremely ordinary-looking middle-aged martial artist's identity was not simple. He was the martial arts grandmaster of the Sword Hut, ranked 29th on the honor list, Kong Ming Sword, Han Tingyi. There were not many people in the Sword Hut. There were actually less than 3,000 inner sect disciples, and the rest were outer sect disciples who did odd jobs. Even so, there were less than 10,000 people. Thus, Han Tingyi did not have any position in the Sword Hut. He was simply a martial arts grandmaster, responsible for teaching some disciples and handling some miscellaneous items. The martial artists of the Sword Hut cultivated the way of the sword. They comprehended sword intent, understood sword theory, and practiced sword techniques. They progressed step by step and had an incomparably solid foundation. But at the same time, this also meant that the martial artists of the Sword Hut spent most of their time cultivating in seclusion, keeping a very low profile. This was the case for Han Tingyi. In his early years, he had not even been on the Longhu list. By the time he left, he was already over 40 years old, only a step away from entering the realm of martial arts grandmasters. But when Han Tingyi stepped into the martial arts world for the first time, he shocked everyone with a single brilliant feat. This was because a disciple of the Sword Hut was killed by the Ghost King sect and dismembered to refine pills. Han Tingyi was ordered to avenge him. He hunted down an entire branch of the Ghost King sect, over 200 people, and killed over 10 Unity of Heaven realm martial artists. He brought back the remains of the Sword Hut disciple. After stepping into the martial arts grandmaster realm, Han Tingyi had consecutively defeated 2 of the 4 major sword hall masters of Sword King City. His might was boundless. This seemingly ordinary middle-aged man's strength was very extraordinary. Sending Han Tingyi to host the World Sword Sect Conference was already very important. In the past, when there were not so many people, the hosts were all Unity of Heaven realm martial artists. Han Tingyi said in a deep voice, "The World Sword Sect Conference is a grand event of my sword lineage. Since ancient times, the sword has been the leader of all weapons. Now that my sword lineage is prosperous, we can host the World Sword Sect Conference. Everyone can exchange pointers and make my sword lineage even more glorious." Han Tingyi's words made some of the martial artists present who did not use swords feel a little uncomfortable. What did he mean by the sword was the leader of all weapons? Did he mean that those who used other weapons were inferior? However, although these people felt a little indignant, they had to admit a fact. In the current martial arts world, martial artists who cultivated the sword indeed had the advantage and the majority. For example, there were 5 major sword sects in the martial arts world, but there were no 5 major saber sections. The other martial artists who used spears, rods, and other strange weapons were even more of a minority. Han Tingyi continued, "This time, there are so many martial artists participating in the World Sword Sect Conference. As for the rules, they naturally have to change. The conference is divided into 3 rounds. The first round is a spar between the younger generation martial artists. In the martial arts world, a single tree does not make a forest. The younger generation martial artists represent the future. It is the future of the martial arts world. Therefore, this round is arranged at the very front. The second round is a spar between martial arts grandmasters. Martial arts itself is the way of fighting and killing. Without fighting, it is impossible to talk on paper. Even martial arts grandmasters cannot work behind closed doors. In the first 2 rounds, be it sword cultivators or martial artists from other sects present, everyone can participate. As for the last round, it will be a discussion of the sword. Our 5 great sword sects will each send a grandmaster to explain the sword Dao. If there are any mistakes or inaccuracies, please point them out and correct them." When Han Tingyi finished speaking, the ones who were the most excited were the martial artists who were rogue cultivators. They did not come to the World Sword Sect Conference with the intention of entering the arena. That kind of place was not something they could go to. These people came for the last round, where those martial arts grandmasters would explain the Dao. The World Sword Sect Conference was a rare event that happened once in 100 years. It was their honor to be able to encounter it. After all, it was a martial arts grandmaster explaining the Tao. Normally, they would not have such an opportunity. At this moment, Han Tingyi's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. He said, "Since it is an arena competition, there must be a prize. Our 5 major sword sects have also come up with a few prizes this time. We are prepared to give it to the winner of the younger generation and the martial arts grandmasters from the 5 major sword sections." As he spoke, Han Tingyi waved his hand and immediately, a few things were carried up. Chapter 385. The 5 great sword sects could be said to have put in a lot of effort for this World Sword Sect Conference. They had taken out a lot of good things. The rewards that were brought up were covered with red cloth. Han Tingyi lifted the first red cloth. Inside was a sword, a secret box, and a bottle of pills. Han Tingyi pointed to the sword whose hilt was black but whose blade was scarlet red, and said in a deep voice, "This sword is a top-grade 6 precious weapon, Scarlet Demon, ranked 65th in the world-famous sword manual. In the past, it was the personal weapon of a devil envoy of the Kunlun devil cult. Now, it has been cleansed of its demonic chi. It still retains its fiendish blood aura. Its power has not decreased much, it is still sharp. In the younger generation's arena competition, the first prize is this Scarlet Demon sword." Han Tingyi pointed to the secret box and said, "This is a secret box that my forgotten sword Hut obtained after attacking the Kunlun devil cult. It was found in the Kunlun devil cult's martial arts library. Inside is a set of demonic path martial arts Great Devil Blood Technique and Blood Transformation Divine Blade. The combination of the two is at the 7th rank. But the people who came to participate in the World Sword Sect Conference are all righteous path people, so my forgotten sword Hut temporarily sealed the incomparably evil Great Devil Blood Technique. Inside is only the Blood Transformation Divine Blade. It can be used as a trump card at a critical moment. It is the prize for the 2nd place. The last bottle of pills contains the Kunlun devil cult's secret pill, Withered Would Give Spring Pill. It is refined from the Kunlun devil cult's rootless sacred flame. It is a holy healing medicine. It is the prize for the 3rd place. After Han Tingyi finished introducing these things, Chu Xiu did not feel anything, but he knew that Mr. Liu and the other Kunlun devil cult martial artists hiding in the dark probably wanted to swallow Han Tingyi alive. Han Tingyi or the entire 5 great sword sects were simply provoking the people of the hidden devil cult. The top 3 prizes they took out were all seized from the hands of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. In other words, these were all spoils of war, but they were the shame of the Kunlun devil cult. Now, they took out these things as rewards. If this wasn't provocation, then what was? However, Mr. Liu and the others naturally wouldn't act up now, because the bigger provocation was yet to come. The expression on Han Tingyi's face did not change. He pointed at the last item wrapped in red cloth and said in a deep voice, "Martial Dao masters don't care about these small things, so we only prepared one reward for the winner. That is the symbol of the Kunlun devil cult in the past, which is also the symbol of the orthodox demonic path, the demonic creation flag." As soon as Han Ting lifted the red cloth, a powerful demonic aura instantly soared into the sky. It was so terrifying that it seemed to cover the sky and cover the sun. There should be a formation set up on the red cloth. Otherwise, it would be impossible to suppress such a powerful aura. Everyone focused their eyes and saw that under the red cloth was a tattered flag. As Han Ting raised the flag, everyone could clearly see the true appearance of the flag. The flag was only about 30 feet tall, and the flagpole was pitch black in color. There were sword scars on it, and it looked incomparably ancient. While the body of the flag could still flutter in the wind, it was extremely damaged as though it could shatter at any moment. Originally, the body of the flag should have been pitch black in color, with all kinds of mysterious seal scripts and diagrams drawn on it with golden patterns. But now, not a single complete seal could be seen. Everyone present had strange expressions. This was the symbol of the former demonic path, the demonic creation flag that represented the orthodox demonic path. The martial Dao grandmasters from the large sects all knew what the 5 great sword sects meant this time. Seeing that they really took out the demonic creation flag, The 5 great sword sects were really determined to suppress the demonic path. The other wandering cultivators stared with all their might. This was the demonic creation flag that represented the former Kunlun devil cult. It was a legendary existence. If they took a few more glances, they would have something to brag about in the future. As for sects like the Ba Mountain Sword sect, they were unperturbed and did not move at all. The demonic creation flag was of no use to them at all. Instead, it was a hot potato. They would not want it even if it was given to them. In the present world, only existences like the 5 great sword sects or the Buddhist and Taoist sects could keep the demonic creation flag. If it was left in the hands of others, they would be attacked by a large group of demonic cultivators the next day and torn to pieces. Because the arena in the center of the practice field was very large, it was divided into 10 parts by the people of the sword hut. It could accommodate 10 groups of people to compete at the same time. In the Sword Sect Conference of the World, the arena competition was just an accessory, especially since the 5 great sword sects had held this Sword Sect Conference with a different goal this time. So the rules were not so strict. Anyone who wanted to go on stage could sign up and start competing at will. They could also challenge each other. But after each round of challenge, the challenged person had the right to rest for a round and recover their strength. This could prevent people from taking turns to fight and deliberately tricking one person. The last rule was newly set by the Sword Sect Conference of the World. In the past, this kind of thing would not happen because the people who participated were warriors from the 5 great sword sects. For them, if anyone dared to play such underhanded tricks in the arena, they would lose their reputation. But this time, there were many outsiders participating in the Sword Sect Conference of the World. It was somewhat out of control, so the 5 great sword sects could only add some new rules to control it. Xie Xiaolu stood beside Chu Xiu and asked, "Brother Chu, are you going to participate in the arena?" Among the other sects, those who represented their sects to participate in the Sword Sect Conference of the World were definitely warriors at the unity of the world realm. The core strength of the sects were almost all not young, so they naturally could not go on stage to compete. But Chu Xiu was an exception. He came to represent the Guanzhong torture room, but his age was that of a warrior of the younger generation, so he naturally had the right to go on stage. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Why wouldn't I want the benefits that are delivered to my doorstep? I can also train my own strength at the same time." "Brother Chu, you use a saber. You also have your eyes on the scarlet demon sword?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Of course not. I only want the blood-dissipating saber. I don't have any extravagant hopes of being number one. You have also seen that fellow Fang Qishao. Although he is a little unreliable, his cultivation in the way of the sword can be said to be terrifying. Furthermore, Fang Qishao has already stepped into the unity of the world realm. Although I have killed more than 1 or 2 warriors of this realm, compared to Fang Qishao, the difference between these people is simply like the difference between clouds and mud. If we don't fight to the death, the current me is not sure that I can beat Fang Qishao. But to be a little arrogant, besides Fang Qishao, among the younger generation of warriors here, who is qualified to fight with me?" Xie Xiaolu thought about it and it really made sense. If Chu Xiu wanted to fight for first place, it might be a little difficult to fight with Fang Qishao, but if he wanted to fight for second place, it would be even easier than Fang Qishao fighting for first place, because no one dared to fight with Chu Xiu. The arenas in all directions opened at the same time, and those who wanted to participate in the arena or challenge could directly enter the arena to start the competition. The 5 martial Dao Grand Masters of the 5 major sword sects stood on the high ground. On the surface, they were protecting the warriors who participated in the arena, but they were secretly monitoring to see if those demonic rats would secretly attack them. On the arena of the martial arts field, the 10 groups of people were fighting in full swing. They had been changed back and forth several times, but those who could still stay in the arena were almost all famous heroes of the younger generation. After Chu Xiu entered the arena, he went through 3 rounds. In fact, in these 3 rounds, Chu Xiu did not even fight. The people in those 3 rounds happened to be people of Eastern Qi. After knowing the identity of Chu Xiu, they directly turned around and fled. In the land of Eastern Qi, Chu Xiu was quite famous. Basically, there were only two outcomes for those who had anything to do with Chu Xiu. One was to die, and the other was to live a life worse than death. In the arena, Chu Xiu was relatively dazzling. Almost all of his opponents were defeated without a fight. This made the warriors of West Chu and Northern Yan feel a little strange. Weren't the warriors of Eastern Qi a little too cowardly? They didn't even fight and they withdrew? It should be known that this was the arena of the World Sword Sect Conference. Everyone came with the intention of learning from each other. Generally, they would not fight to the death. Fighting was just to hone their own strength. What were they afraid of? In fact, the warriors of Eastern Qi were indeed a little frightened by Chu Xiu's behavior. Those who went against him were basically dead or crippled. Although they also knew that this was the World Sword Sect Conference and Chu Xiu did not dare to go too far, no one was willing to guarantee it with their lives. Looking at the other young martial artists who were on the Dragon and Tiger list, they seemed to be fighting quite well. Although the seventh young Master Fong was somewhat unreliable, he was not ruthless in his attacks. Almost none of the warriors who had fought with him had been able to withstand more than 3 strikes from him. However, at the same time, his opponents had also benefited greatly. When the others saw that Fang Qi did not kill them, they all gathered at Fang Qi's side, wanting to take the opportunity to fight with him to learn a few moves. Later, Fang Qi also felt annoyed. He directly erupted with his strongest strength and defeated his opponent with one move. It was simple and easy, so the other warriors could not see anything. Only then did the disappointed crowd change their direction. In addition to Fang Qi, Nie Dongliu's performance was also very exciting. Nie Donglu had already practiced the Nie family's Heaven and Earth Cloud hand to an extremely proficient level. Later, he followed Han Baxian to practice fist martial arts. His strength was even better than before. There were few warriors who could withstand more than 3 moves from him. However, Fang Qi could not be bothered to give pointers to the warriors who fought with him. On the other hand, Nie Donglu patiently gave pointers to every warrior who fought with him and lost to him, earning him a good reputation. In addition to Chu Xiu and the others, Yunnu Palace's Yan Fian, Xie Xiaolu and the others on the arena also performed very well. As long as one was on the Longhu list, when facing ordinary warriors of the same level, they had a huge advantage. But now, when some people saw Chu Xiu's glorious appearance, they felt extremely unbalanced. Chapter 386. Looking at Chu Xiu's prowess in the arena, the one who was mentally unbalanced was Xiahou Wujiang. This time, he also followed his father, Xiahou Zhen, to participate in the World Sword Sect Conference. Xiahou Zhen brought Xiahou Wujiang here to let him see the world and increase his seniority. According to Xiahou Zhen, in the future, the Xiahou clan would definitely be handed over to Xiahou Wujiang, and their branch must be reappointed as the family head. The death of 7th uncle last time was a huge blow to Xiahou Wujiang, even more than when Chan was killed by Chu Xiu. Chan was just a maid of Xiahou Wujiang. To put it bluntly, she was just one of his many women. Now that one of them died, Xiahou Wujiang didn't feel any pain, only anger. But 7th uncle was an elder who watched him grow up, and was also one of Xiahou Zhen's confidants. Now that he died because of him, this blow was extraordinarily heavy for Xiahou Wujiang. Therefore, since the last time, Xiahou Wujiang changed his habits and became somewhat taciturn. He actually took the initiative to ask for no hardship cultivation, which made Xiahou Zhen feel somewhat gratified. At least his son could still be saved. Because Chu Xiu was between the Northern Yan and West Chu people, he didn't see anyone from Eastern Qi's side, so Xiahou Wujiang and Chu Xiu didn't meet. But at this time, Xiahou Wujiang saw that Chu Xiu was so glorious on the arena, almost subduing the enemy without a fight, which made Xiahou Wujiang feel extremely unbalanced. Xiahou Zhen felt that Xiahou Wujiang was strange, and he said indifferently, "What? Not convinced? The people of Jianghu can take and let go. Chu Xiu has the strength, so he has the qualifications to be glorious now. Don't forget what Old Seven told you before, don't provoke Chu Xiu without absolute certainty. Now is not the time to touch Chu Xiu. The strength of the Guanzhong torture room isn't weak, but it has been hiding and keeping a low profile all these years, so it hasn't been noticed by others. The last time I lost to Guan, it was my miscalculation. Guan is even about to break through to the true fire soul refinement realm. With the protection of the Guanzhong torture room, unless I could seize the power of the Xiahou family and completely control it, I wouldn't be able to suppress the Guanzhong torture room with my current power. I'm still going to say the same thing. You can take it easy and let it go. There's no rush to take revenge now. You have to look forward and not be obsessed with this little grudge. Xiahou Wujiang looked coldly at Chu Xiu in the arena, nodded, and said, I know, father. I won't go into the arena this time. Although Xiahou Wujiang deeply hated Chu Xiu, he also knew his own capabilities. At this time, he didn't have the confidence to challenge Chu Xiu in the arena, and he also didn't have the confidence to face Yan Fian of the Yunnu Palace. It could only be said that he had a 50-50 chance. There was also that Nie Donglu. Although most people in the Jianghu knew that Nie Donglu was a scheming person, and his methods were more famous than his strength, Nie Donglu had been in seclusion for 2 years, and he had even become the disciple of the northern Yan Jianghu's tyrant, Han Baxian. Xiahou Wujiang also didn't have the confidence to defeat him. As for facing Fang Qishao, he didn't even have the confidence to block 3 of Fang Qishao's swords. The two of them weren't existences of the same realm and level at all. The arena competition of the World Sword Sect Conference was just a spar. Although it wasn't that serious, there were still so many people watching. With Xiahou Wujiang's status, if he didn't have the confidence to enter the top 3, then he should forget it. He would only be humiliating himself if he went up. However, Xiahou Wujiang wasn't willing to just watch Chu Xiu continue to show off here. He coldly snorted, stood up, and walked towards the northern Yan side. Xiahou Jun frowned and said, What are you going to do? Didn't you hear what I said just now? Xiahou Wujiang said in a deep voice, Father, don't worry. I won't go up to the arena to compete with Chu Xiu. It's just that I don't want Chu Xiu to win too easily. I believe that many people will be happy to see this happen. Hearing Xiahou Wujiang say this, Xiahou Jun thought about it and didn't continue to say anything. He only hoped that Xiahou Wujiang could be more steady. However, if he was too steady, steadiness would become timidity. This wasn't a good thing, so Xiahou Jun didn't stop him. Xiahou Wujiang walked straight to the northern Yan side and arrived in front of the monks from the Great Light Temple. With a smile on his face, he cupped his hands and said, Xiahou Wujiang greets the masters. Su Yan glanced at Xiahou Wujiang, put his palms together, and returned the greeting. So it's the young master of the Xiahou clan. You're too polite. The Great Light Temple was far away in the northern Yan, while the Xiahou clan was in eastern Qi. The two sides actually didn't have much contact. However, the Xiahou clan was one of the 9 great families, and it was the kind that ranked at the top. Su Yan would still give Xiahou Wujiang face. I wonder what young Master Xiahou is here for? Su Yan asked directly. He was a martial arts grandmaster level powerhouse, the Vajra institution's master. He naturally wasn't willing to play any tricks with a junior martial artist like Xiahou Wujiang. It would be more appropriate if it was Xiahou Jun instead. Xiahou Wujiang pointed at Chu Xiu on the arena and said in a clear voice, Masters, back in the sky-reaching tower, when Chu Xiu tortured and killed your temple's great master Ming Chen, I was also present. Chu Xiu's attack was ruthless and decisive. Although I didn't have any friendship with great master Ming Chen, I still admired the reputation of the Great Light Temple's masters. I wanted to stop him, but it was too late and great master Ming Chen was killed. During the sky-reaching tower battle, an elder who had taken care of me since I was young also died at the hands of Chu Xiu. However, I deeply hate myself for being useless and not being able to avenge my 7th uncle. Even if my father made a move, he was defeated by Guan Siyu of the Guanzhong torture room. This time, the masters have brought so many masters to the World Sword Sect Conference. I believe that Great Master Ming Chen definitely won't die in vain. The masters will definitely not let Chu Xiu continue to be so arrogant. As soon as Xiahou Wujiang said this, the Great Light Temple's martial artists immediately became excited. Moreover, Xiahou Wujiang's voice was not soft. The surrounding people also heard Xiahou Wujiang's words and looked at the people from the Great Light Temple. Looking at Xiahou Wujiang, Su Yan's expression immediately became gloomy. He never thought that this junior from the Xiahou clan would dare to provoke the Great Light Temple. Originally, the Great Light Temple was not prepared to make a move at the World's Sword Sect Conference. However, with Xiahou Wujiang's provocation, the disciples who had previously quietened down became excited again. Moreover, Xiahou Wujiang's words were also secretly hinting to the others that the Great Light Temple would not dare to make a move against Chu Xiu. Similarly, their own people had died at the hands of Chu Xiu, but their Xiahou clan dared to go to the Guanzhong torture room to demand justice. Even if Xiahou Zhen was defeated by Guanxiu in the end, at least their Xiahou clan dared to make a move and would not disappoint their own people. However, in contrast to the people from the Great Light Temple, they did not make a move. In this way, the Great Light Temple indeed appeared somewhat cold. Of course, no one would say that the Great Light Temple was too weak. The Kunlun Devil cult had been destroyed. In this world, no one could make the Great Light Temple retreat. However, the surrounding martial artists looked at Su Yan and the others somewhat differently. Their own disciples had been killed, and the enemy was right in front of them. Regardless of whether they could kill the other party, it was normal for them to at least show some expression. However, the Great Light Temple turned a blind eye to it. This group of monks was truly cold. Su Yan looked coldly at Xiahou Wujiang and said in a low voice, "How dare you?" Xiahou Wujiang smiled and said, "Master Su Yan is too serious. I was just speaking the truth. I have no intention of harming the Great Light Temple." At this time, Su Du, who had not spoken all this while, put away his lazy expression. His expression was frighteningly gloomy. An aura erupted from his body, pressing down on Xiahou Wujiang's body like a mountain. It immediately caused him to break out in a cold sweat, and he could not help but want to kneel down. However, Xiahou Wujiang was forcefully holding on at this time. If he were to kneel down in front of everyone, he would lose a lot of face. However, the coercion of a martial Dao grandmaster was not so easy to resist. Xiahou Wujiang had unleashed all of his strength, but he still could not resist Shudu's coercion. Even the bones all over his body were creaking. Just as Xiahou Wujiang was about to be unable to resist, a golden light enveloped his body, canceling out Su Du's pressure. Xiahou Zhen appeared beside Xiahou Wujiang at some point. He cupped his hands at Su Du and Su Yan and said, "I have not taught my son well and have offended the two masters. Please forgive me." Su Du put away his pressure and snorted coldly. "Xiahou Zhen, it is not that you have not taught your son well. You have taught a good son. These little tricks are quite smooth, just like you when you were young. However, did you not teach him that playing these little tricks also depends on the person? This is the World Sword Sect Conference, and I am giving face to the 5 major sword sections. Otherwise, believe it or not, I will twist his head off." Being ridiculed by Su Du, Xiahou Zhen still had a smile on his face. Master Su Du is right. This kind of thing will not happen again. After saying that, Xiahou Zhen directly grabbed Xiahou Wujiang and left. The smile on his face also became extremely gloomy at that moment. Returning to the Xiahou clan side, Xiahou Zhen snorted coldly. "You want to scheme against Chu Xiu? Fine, but who asked you to provoke the Great Light Temple? Are you looking for death?" Xiahou Wujiang wiped the cold sweat off his head and said with a smile, "Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. I just provoked a little, not harming the Great Light Temple. Even if they are angry, what can they do? The Great Light Temple is far away in the northern Yen and has no direct relationship with the Xiahou clan. They cannot threaten the interests of the Xiahou clan. Moreover, this is the World Sword Sect Conference, and I am a junior. At most, the other party will just teach me a lesson. Using a lesson in exchange for the Great Light Temple finding trouble with Chu Xiu, this is a very good deal." In fact, Xiahou Wujiang had always been very clear in his heart. Since he dared to provoke the Great Light Temple, then he must have thought of the consequences beforehand. However, Xiahou Zhen sneered. "Good deal? If you want to provoke, you also have to look at the target. Do you really think that Su Du saying that he would twist your head off was said in a moment of anger? If I wasn't here today, If you said anything more, Su Du would really dare to disregard the Xiahou clan's face and twist your head off. Chapter 387. Xiahou Zhen's words made Xiahou Wujiang look stunned. It was a big taboo for a senior martial artist to attack a junior martial artist. Even when Xiahou Zhen went to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for Su Du, it was all under the excuse of seeking justice for seventh uncle. He did not believe that Su Du, the head of the Shaolin Temple's Kongji Zen Hall and a well-known martial Dao grandmaster, would openly attack a junior martial artist like him. Xiahou Zhen sneered, "You juniors don't even understand the matters of the underworld. What kind of people don't exist in the underworld? Some people follow the rules, but some people don't. Su Du is the head of the Kongji Zen Hall, but do you know what his nickname was in the past? Monk Sanfo." This guy was powerful and talented. Among the Su generation in the Shaolin Temple, in terms of talent, he was second only to the abbot Su Ci and the head of the Wangyan Zen Hall, Su Yun. However, this monk was an out-and-out lunatic. He had once gone crazy 3 times a day, and no one could stop him. He had even dared to point at the nose of the previous abbot and curse 18 generations of his ancestors. He had almost been expelled from the Temple of Great Light. After Su Ci took charge of the Great Light Temple, Su Du became much more well-behaved. Although he was the head of the Kongji Zen Hall, he did not care about the matters of the Kongji Zen Hall. With this guy's personality, do you think he was joking when he said he would break your head? He even dared to curse the previous abbot. What else would he not dare to do? Remember, you must not provoke this kind of madman. He is not an existence that can be measured with common sense. Xiahou Wujiang nodded, but he was also covered in cold sweat. It was better to be careful when playing tricks with a martial Dao grandmaster. Otherwise, it was easy to die without even knowing how. But Xiahou Wujiang did not regret it, because his words had worked. On the Great Light Temple's side, Xiahou Wujiang's provocation naturally could not be hidden from Su Du and Su Yen. The two of them did not care, but the other younger disciples of the Great Light Temple exploded. The Great Light Temple was the leader of the North Buddhist sect. As a Buddhist sect, although they were not too overbearing when dealing with other sects, they would not allow others to humiliate them. Just like what Xiahou Wujiang had said, allowing Chu Xiu to strut around in the arena was an insult to the Great Light Temple, and it also disappointed their disciples. Therefore, a martial artist in his 30s, who was from the Ming generation, ignored Su Yan's advice and walked into the ring, shouting, "Disciple of the Temple of Great Light, Ming Cheng, challenges the Guanzhong torture room's Chu Xiu." As soon as he said that, everyone present was stunned and turned to look at Chu Xiu and Ming Cheng. Although there was a challenge mechanism in the arena of the World Sword Sect Conference, a few rounds had already passed and no one had taken the initiative to challenge anyone. The World Sword Sect meets arena is not intense. Most of them are just sparring. Looking at the few people in the arena, it was obvious that Fang Qi Shao had no intention to fight at all. He was just doing his job. Yan Fian was the same. Because she was a disciple of the Yunu Palace, she wanted to win a good ranking for the Yunu Palace. Nie Donglu even used the opportunity of the arena to buy people's hearts. The time he spent giving pointers to his opponents was longer than the time he spent fighting with them. As for Chu Xiu, the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths was about to begin. He was prepared to reap some benefits before it began, so he did not have any intention to fight. Therefore, things like challenging a specific person did not happen. The World Sword Sect meet was not a place to settle grudges. However, now that Ming Cheng had taken the initiative to challenge, this situation was broken. Everyone could see that Ming Cheng's aggressive manner was not a good one. Su Yen frowned and immediately wanted to stop him, but he was stopped by Su Du. Su Du said lazily, "That kid has already stood out. What's the use of stopping him? Fight, it's better to let them go. This bunch of kids are angry. If you don't let them fight, who knows, they might even secretly attack later." Su Yen frowned and said, "But what if something goes wrong? Chu Xiu is famous for being ruthless and decisive. Also, I promised senior brother Su Yun that I would not pursue this matter anymore." Su Du's expression turned serious, which was rare. He stared at Su Yen and said, "Junior brother, After being in charge of the Vajra institution for so many years, your Vajra temper has been worn away. Have you forgotten the rules of the pugilistic world? In the pugilistic world, either you are beaten to death by others, or you can only beat others to death. If you don't have the strength, then don't stand out. Can you protect them for a lifetime? Although you and I have shaved our tongues and become monks, the Great Light Temple itself is in the pugilistic world. Some rules will not change. If these junior martial artists want to fight, just let them go. Life and death are up to fate. At least your spirit is still there. Su Yen hesitated and said, "Then what about senior brother Su Yun?" Su Du instantly regained his lazy attitude and said calmly, "Go and explain. I don't want to deal with him." Looking at Su Du, Su Yen was speechless. However, he did not stop those disciples. There were martial arts masters from the 5 major sword sects around. Although he could not guarantee the absolute safety of the Great Light Temple's disciples, he could at least guarantee their lives. Since they wanted to go, then he would let them go. At that moment, on the arena, Han Tingyi frowned slightly. However, he did not say much. Instead, he asked Chu Xiu directly, "Do you accept the challenge from the Great Light Temple's Mingqing?" The arena of the World Sword Sect Conference was not that intense. Although one could challenge, the challenger had to accept it first. Chu Xiu looked at the Great Light Temple and Xiahou clan's side, and a cold look flashed in his eyes. Because of Chu Xiu's previous fierce reputation, his opponents immediately surrendered when it was his turn. Chu Xiu could only stand on the arena and wait for the next round. He saw Xiahou Wujiang's actions when he came to look for the Great Light Temple. However, because he was too far away, he did not hear clearly what the other party said. However, when Xiahou Wujiang just left, someone from the Great Light Temple came to challenge him. Clearly, Xiahou Wujiang did not say anything nice. Thinking of this, Chu Xiu could not help but reveal waves of murderous intent in his eyes. Xiahou Wujiang was like a fly, always trying to find some trouble for him. Although it wasn't too big and couldn't threaten his life, it was still very annoying. Therefore, Chu Xiu already had a plan in mind. If there were no problems, even if he, Xiahou Wujiang, did not go on the arena, he would not be able to walk out of this floating jade mountain. Seeing that Chu Xiu did not speak, Han Tingyi coughed and added, "The World Sword Sect Conference is only for exchanging pointers. It's fine if you don't want to accept the challenge. Just wait for the next round." The 5 major sword sects only wanted to lure the demonic sects to attack this time. As for other matters, it was better to avoid trouble. It was best if Chu Xiu did not agree, otherwise, it would be troublesome if he caused any trouble. However, Chu Xiu grinned and said, "Since the Great Light Temple wants to fight, I naturally can't be a wet blanket, right? I accept." As soon as this was said, most of the warriors present immediately looked at Chu Xiu. The other matches were too boring. There was no sense of urgency of fighting in the arena. Now, there was finally something exciting. This also made the warriors present excited. Mingqing walked onto the arena with a cold expression. His aura gradually solidified, and a faint golden aura bloomed around him. The pressure was actually infinitely close to the unity of heaven and man realm. The disciples of the Great Light Temple had always been low-key. This was publicly acknowledged in the pugilistic world. Mingqing was a disciple of the Vajra institution. He was of the same generation as Mingchen, who died in the hands of Chu Xiu. However, he was younger than Mingchen, and his strength was also superior. Normally, a disciple of Mingqing's level could be nurtured as a future successor in other sections. However, in the Great Light Temple, Mingqing was not considered ordinary, but he could only be considered an ordinary elite disciple. There were not many disciples like this in the Great Light Temple, but they were not few either. The 3 major Zen halls and the 6 major martial institutions could find more than a dozen of them. Therefore, even though Mingqing could only be said to be a nobody in the pugilistic world and had not even been on the Longhu leaderboard, his strength was not inferior to the elites on the leaderboard. It was just that he was slightly older. Looking at the murderous Mingqing and the indifferent Chu Xiu, Han Tingyi shook his head helplessly and said, "Since both of you are willing, then make your move." However, let me reiterate that the arena of the World Sword Sect Conference is only used for sparring, not for you to kill each other and settle your grudges. You must remember this. Otherwise, if things get out of hand, it won't look good for anyone. Chu Xiu smiled and nodded. Senior Han, don't worry. I'm familiar with the rules of the arena competition. Nothing will go wrong. When Chu Xiu said this, the martial artists from West Chu and Northern Yen did not feel anything. However, the martial artists from Eastern Qi, especially those who had participated in the God Weapon Conference, all had strange expressions on their faces. They did not forget that when Chu Xiu had participated in the God Weapon Conference in Eastern Qi, Cheng Tingfeng of the Hidden Sword Villa had intercepted him and prevented him from killing Shen Bai. However, Chu Xiu had still dared to cripple Shen Bai under the pressure of a martial arts master. His guts were not ordinary. Now, Chu Xiu said that he was familiar with the rules of the arena. Familiar with what? Familiar with how to kill someone under the nose of a martial arts master? However, Han Tingyi did not know about this. He was a martial arts master, so of course, he would not care about the messy matters between the younger martial artists. Hearing this, Han Tingyi only nodded and said, if that's the case, then do it. With that, Mingqing was just about to point at Chu Xiu and say something when he saw Chu Xiu wave his hand and say, cut the crap. I originally thought that the Great Light Temple would keep its promise and let this matter go, but who would have thought that you monks would go back on your word? If that's the case, what else is there to say? I just hope that you won't regret it in the end. Chapter 388. Chu Xiu's words caused Mingqing to swallow back all the words he wanted to say. Actually, at this point, it was meaningless to say who was right and who was wrong. Chu Xiu's style was to kill whoever wanted to kill him. It was that simple and direct. As for Mingqing, his senior brother had been killed, but they were forced by the elders of the sect not to take revenge. This made him feel very aggrieved, and he could not help but want to make a move. Mingqing took back what he wanted to say. He only snorted and said, my Great Light Temple does not go back on our words. It was my personal decision to challenge you in the arena. It has nothing to do with the Great Light Temple. Moreover, this is the World Sword Sect Conference. I just want to challenge you. What can I? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, what's the use of saying so many useless excuses? Just make a move. You monks are too straightforward. Be more straightforward. The winner will stand, and the loser will scram. It's that simple. Mingqing's eyes revealed a hint of anger and he snorted, if you want to die, I'll grant your wish. As soon as he finished speaking, Mingqing's body flashed with dazzling golden gangqi. As it rotated, it was as if Vajra had descended to the world, burning with raging flames as he punched at Chu Xiu. The Great Light Temple had countless precious Buddhist secret scriptures. Among them, the most famous secret scripture of the Vajra department was the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra. This body-tempering technique could be said to be top-notch, but its only disadvantage was that it affected a warrior's state of mind too much. This also caused most of the warriors from the Vajra department to be hot-tempered and impulsive. Of course, if one could suppress the anger in one's heart, it was equivalent to completely mastering the true meaning of the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra. It was just like the current Vajra department's first seat. He was not so impulsive, and his personality became very rational. Regardless of whether it was Ming Chen, who had died at the hands of Chu Xiu, or Ming Cheng, they had not reached this level, so they could not help but be rash and impulsive in their actions. However, this was not a big deal. In a real battle, the anger of the Heart Sutra of Furious Vajra would burn to the extreme, and its power would be extremely powerful. Just like now, Ming Cheng's punch shook the arena and made a series of explosions. Its power was comparable to that of a great master in the unity of heaven and man realm. Strictly speaking, Cheng was a martial art practitioner from the previous generation. It was just that he was relatively young, not even in his 40s. It was normal for him to be included in the younger generation of martial art practitioners. After all, the seniority in the Temple of Great Light had always been very messy. There were even martial art practitioners in the Su generation who were in their 20s. However, even though Ming Cheng was young, his cultivation was deep, and he was even stronger than Ming Chen of the past. As his fist descended, Buddhist light suppressed all evil and annihilated the devil. Its might was incomparably powerful. Chu Xiu's figure did not move. His hand formed the great Vajra wheel seal, and a similarly blinding Buddhist light exploded from his hand. It made Chu Xiu look like a Vajra that could subdue demons, and his might was incomparably powerful. Everyone present was stunned. Why did Chu Xiu's attainments in Buddhist techniques seem to be stronger than Ming Cheng's? The great Vajra wheel seal collided with Ming Cheng's fist, and an ear-piercing sonic boom was heard. If it were not for the matrix that the sword hut had prepared for the arena, the two's attacks would have been enough to shatter the entire arena. After the loud sonic boom, Chu Xiu's figure did not move, but Ming Cheng could not help but take a step back. His eyes were filled with shock. In the northern Buddha sect's temple of great light, Ming Cheng was proud of his own strength. In the end, he discovered that Chu Xiu's strength was even greater than his. Chu Xiu's expression did not change. He still formed the great Vajra wheel seal in his hand and struck out once again. Out of all of Chu Xiu's techniques, the great Vajra divine power was definitely not the strongest. However, for Chu Xiu at his current stage, it was the one that was the most helpful. The martial arts that Chu Xiu cultivated could be said to be extremely diverse. Before he had the great Vajra divine power, Chu Xiu's vital qi and mental energy were not weak. The only thing he was lacking was the strength of his physical body. This was the effect of the wooden bucket. The amount of water a bucket could hold depended on its shortest piece of wood. When Chu Xiu successfully made up for his shortest piece of wood, Chu Xiu was truly invulnerable. There was not a single flaw that could be picked out in any area. Furthermore, when he was cultivating the great Vajra divine power in seclusion, Chu Xiu had even refined half of the beast's heart. This caused Chu Xiu's strength to increase greatly. Even if he were to compete with the Great Light Temple's warriors in terms of strength, he still had the upper hand. When the second Great Vajra wheel seal landed, Ming Cheng gritted his teeth. The Vajra shadow behind him bloomed, and a powerful Buddhist light condensed into a swastika seal to forcefully resist Chu Xiu's Great Vajra wheel seal. Another loud boom was heard, and Ming Cheng immediately took another step back. Chu Xiu seemed to only know the Great Vajra wheel seal. No matter what Ming Cheng's attack looked like, he would land a Great Vajra wheel seal and force Ming Cheng to take a step back. After 9 consecutive Great Vajra wheel seals landed, Ming Cheng was forced to the edge of the arena. This caused everyone present to watch anxiously, wondering if Chu Xiu could completely crush and defeat Ming Cheng. Han Tingyi, who was standing on the high platform, nodded. At this moment, he could also see that Chu Xiu's strength was truly worthy of his ranking on the Longhu list. Whether it was his own strength or his control of martial arts techniques, he had already reached the peak of the 5 Chi's origin realm. Even warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm were inferior to him in certain aspects. Basic strength, vital energy, and mental strength could be achieved through various external objects. Whether it was through seclusion, the guidance of a great teacher, or the consumption of various treasures, it was very easy to rapidly improve a warrior's realm. On the other hand, combat strength had to be improved through intense fighting, which was the most difficult aspect. Just when everyone, including Han Tingyi, thought that Chu Xiu would still use the Great Vajra wheel seal to blast Ming Cheng out of the arena, Chu Xiu's hand's seal suddenly changed. This subtle change could not be noticed by others, but as a martial arts master, Han Tingyi immediately felt that something was wrong. However, it was already too late. The 5 rays of light in Chu Xiu's hand were connected from head to tail, rotating endlessly like the great sun wheel. It suddenly fell, and the power of the 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other, bursting out an unparalleled power. Sun will seal. No one present expected that Chu Xiu would suddenly change his hand's seal in the middle of the battle. Even his opponent, Ming Cheng, did not expect this. Ming Cheng had taken 9 of Chu Xiu's Great Vajra wheel seals in a row. He already had a subconscious understanding of the changes in the power of the Great Vajra wheel seal, so he only used the martial arts technique that he was good at to resist. He was also prepared to be blasted out of the arena by Chu Xiu's seal, so he did not prepare to use his killing move. However, who would have thought that this time, Chu Xiu did not play according to the rules. Under the sun will seal, Ming Cheng spat out a mouthful of blood, and his internal organs were shaken. He was directly blasted more than 30 meters away, smashed on the ground, and fainted. Everyone could see that under this attack, Ming Cheng would be seriously injured even if he did not die. Han Tingyi's expression changed, and he shouted angrily, "Chu Xiu! What are you doing? Didn't I tell you before that the arena of the World Sword Sect Conference is for you to exchange pointers, not for you to kill?" Chu Xiu shrugged innocently and said, "Senior Han, please understand. There are so many people watching here. I did not kill, and Ming Cheng is not dead yet. However, the martial artists of the Great Light Temple are very strong, so I could only use all my strength to attack. Swords have no eyes, fists and feet have no heart. Even if it is a careful sparring, isn't it normal to be injured or something? If there are restrictions, then there is no need to fight. Everyone can just sit down and talk." Han Tingyi snorted coldly. As a martial arts master, he naturally could not be calculative with a junior like Chu Xiu. Although everyone could see that Chu Xiu was quibbling, in terms of the rules, Chu Xiu really did not do anything wrong. Han Tingyi rubbed his head with a headache. It did not matter that Chu Xiu had seriously injured Ming Cheng, but the Great Light Temple was in an uproar. Seeing that Ming Cheng had been severely injured, the Great Light Temple's side became even more agitated. That group of disciples were so angry that they seemed to have lost their minds. Immediately, another warrior jumped out and said coldly, "Great Light Temple's Vajra Courtyard's Mingyi challenges Guanzhong Torture Hall's Chu Xiu." Han Tingyi frowned and said to Chu Xiu, "You have won a round. According to the rules, you can stop for a round to recuperate. Are you going to use it now?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "There is no need. I'm not afraid of taking turns." Hearing Chu Xiu say that, Han Tingyi did not say anything else and directly let the two of them fight. Since there was a first round, there would be a second round. He would just let them fight. Mingyi walked onto the arena. He was slightly older than Ming Cheng, but his attacks were also more fierce. After going onto the arena, Mingyi did not say anything. He held a Buddhist commandment blade in his hand and slashed at Chu Xiu. His Buddhist commandment blade bloomed with Buddha's light, but the saber's momentum was extremely ruthless. Killing evil and beheading demons, merciful Buddhist commandment blade. With a merciful heart, the saber's murderous intent was limitless. Chu Xiu closed his eyes slightly and the heavenly demon dance was already in his hand. He raised the long saber and the devil's chi and evil blood chi intertwined and condensed, bringing about a wave of extremely evil power. As the saber slashed down, the saber's momentum of the three sabers of Avicii condensed into one, and its power was terrifying. The people from the Great Light Temple wanted to find Chu Xiu for revenge, but Chu Xiu was using them to hone his own strength. When he was in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu cultivated the great Vajra divine power and refined half of the fierce beast's heart. His own realm could be considered to have increased greatly, which also caused a slight fluctuation in Chu Xiu's foundation. Although it was only a trace, Chu Xiu still had to hone it to a perfect realm. In such a situation, most warriors usually had two methods. One was to continue training in seclusion until they could completely control this power. The other was to hone one's foundation through fighting and killing. Obviously, Chu Xiu chose the latter. Chapter 389. There were no weaklings among the warriors from the Great Light Temple. This was common knowledge in the martial arts world. To put it simply, the Great Light Temple should be a sect with a very low bottom line. As long as it was a warrior from the Great Light Temple, his abilities would not be too weak. The Li family's housekeeper that Chu Xiu had met in Wei County was a cook from the Great Light Temple. He was just a cook, but his abilities were considered outstanding among the rogue cultivators. As for the warriors who came to participate in the World Sword Conference, although they were not at the level of Wisdom King, Zhongxian, they were still the elite disciples of the Vajrayard. Otherwise, they would not have been brought by Su Yan to participate in the World Sword Conference. Opponents of this level were not weak. For Chu Xiu, they were good materials to train his own strength. At this moment, on the arena, Chu Xiu's Avicii demonic blade collided with Ming Yi's merciful breaking blade. A monstrous, turbulent demonic aura exploded and directly destroyed the Buddha's light blade. Moreover, this was not the end. Blood-colored astral energy erupted from Chu Xiu's heavenly demonic dance. The boundless killing intent brought about by the refined blood divine astral dance instantly enveloped Ming Yi. The saber aura enveloped him like a torrential downpour. After Ming Yi had slashed through the saber aura with great difficulty, a demonic saber that seemed to have been slashed out from hell, containing divinity, came crashing down. It directly shattered Ming Yi's saber, causing him to vomit blood as he was sent flying off the stage. Chu Xiu used the heavenly demon dance in his hand to point at the people from the Great Light Temple. He revealed a cold smile at the corner of his lips and said, "Next." As soon as he said this, everyone present was in an uproar. To provoke the Great Light Temple like this guy was simply too arrogant. The people from the Great Light Temple were even more in an uproar. A warrior did not even say his name and directly went up the arena to attack Chu Xiu. Everyone present shook their heads. They had seen arrogant people before, but they had never seen someone this arrogant. This Chu Xiu was practically offending the Great Light Temple to death. Could it be that the Guanzhong torture room was so arrogant now that it thought it was the Jianghu's torture chamber? However, they did not know that Chu Xiu dared to be so arrogant because he did not rely on Guanxiu, but rather the entire fiend path behind him. Chu Xiu represented the Yin demon sect, or even the entire hidden demon sect. Not to mention Xiaohojin, Su Yan and the others, even if the abbot of the Great Brightness Temple, Su Ci, were to come, there would naturally be those big shots of the demonic Dao who would help Chu Xiu. At this moment in the crowd below, Mr. Liu, who was disguised as the Pine Wave Sword Su Songtao, looked at the extremely arrogant Chu Xiu on the arena and transmitted his voice in a low voice. This kid is really arrogant. What is he planning to do? Using all the disciples of the Great Light Temple as a whetstone to train his own strength? However, Elder Wei, this kid is not like this usually. When he needs to be low-key, he will be low-key and ruthless. This time, he wants to show off in the arena? Beside Mr. Liu, a handsome young man in white with a jade-like face stood beside Mr. Liu with a folding fan in his hand. With a low and hoarse voice, he said, "This kid is smart. He is the new talent of the hidden demon sect. Now that our fiend path has gathered the entire floating jade mountain, it would not be a problem for him to be 100 times more arrogant." The handsome young man standing beside Mr. Liu was Jade-Face Heavenly Demon Wuxia. He had specially asked the people of the Phaseless Demon sect to help him disguise himself like this. In fact, this appearance was originally Wuxia's appearance when he was young. The 9 sky demons of the 5 sky demons were things that happened more than 200 years ago. Now, Wuxia was not afraid of being recognized. Although Wuxia previously said that his face was full of wrinkles and that he was no longer the Jade-Face Heavenly Demon, now that it was time to disguise himself, he took the initiative to ask the people of the Phaseless Demon sect to disguise himself to look young. His words did not match his heart. This almost made the martial artist of the Phaseless Demon sect laugh out loud. Of course, in the end the martial artist held back. Otherwise, this Elder Wei's temper would not be so good. At this time, hearing Wuxia say this, Mr. Liu also heaved a sigh of relief. On the surface, Chu Xiu's identity was a rising star of the demon Dao. However, he was also a person that he and Mei Qinglian had their eyes on at the same time. He represented the Yin demon sect and their Phaseless demon sect. In the future, if Chu Xiu became famous in the hidden demon sect, he would naturally be considered as their ally. Therefore, when Chu Xiu stepped onto the arena, Mr. Liu told Wuxia about Chu Xiu's identity in the underworld. This was to let this veteran of the demon Dao recognize Chu Xiu as well and gain his favor. Wuxia was an experienced person, and he could see through Mr. Liu's thoughts at a glance. He could not help but smile and say, "Don't worry. I said before, this kid is very smart. Moreover, being arrogant is not a bad thing. As a wanderer in the underworld, he should be proud and impassioned. If a person is not arrogant when he is young, he has no future. However, if he is still arrogant when he is middle-aged, then he has no future. When I was young, I was much more arrogant than that kid. My Inma clan doesn't have to hide in the dark like a mouse and wear out our spirit. It's not bad to be like this kid. A hint of joy appeared in Mr. Lu's eyes. In the Demon Dao, there were not many people that Wei Shuya would say were not bad. It was not easy for Chu Xiu to get such an evaluation. Although this old man was not young anymore, he was still alone and did not even have a disciple or a servant. However, in the Hidden Devil clan, he was one of the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Heaven Mountain. This qualification was enough for him to be at the top of the devil path. Moreover, although the Demon Dao alliance created by the 5 sky demons of the 9 Heavens Mountain was killed, there were many survivors. Those who were able to survive that battle were all strong cultivators in the Demon Dao. Their development in the Demon Dao was not weak. Now that Wei Shuya had raised his arm and called for help, not all of the disciples of those people were willing to go through fire and water for Wei Shuya. At that moment, in the arena, Chu Xiu had already consecutively defeated several Great Light Temple's ancient martial art practitioners within a short period of time. Furthermore, it was a battle of attrition. It was a completely crushing aura, directly causing the Great Light Temple's ancient martial art practitioners to be terrified. Not a single one of them could withstand more than 10 moves from Chu Xiu. In the end, although there were still a few people from the Great Light Temple who had not entered the arena, they did not jump out to challenge anymore. Instead, they all lowered their heads and looked angry and humiliated. The remaining few people were weaker than the previous people. Their strongest senior brothers had been defeated. What else could they use to fight? Moreover, because it was a continuous battle, Chu Xiu seemed to have consumed a lot of his inner strength and vital qi. If they persisted, they might have a chance. However, they did not choose to make a move. The reason was simple. The ancient martial art practitioners from the Great Light Temple still cared about their reputation. Since they could not defeat Chu Xiu head-on, even if they could defeat him in a continuous battle, the people of the Jianghu would say that the Great Light Temple was bullying him with numbers. They did not want to do something so embarrassing. Therefore, they could only stand there and not dare to make a move. Looking at the disciples' sullen expressions, Su Du mocked them before Su Yan could say anything. I say, you juniors are really something. Can't you take a blow? No matter what, Chu Xiu is 6th on the Longhu leaderboard. Do you really think that the leaderboard that Wind Sweeping Tower created is a joke? If he could be defeated so easily by you, wouldn't the Great Light Temple be able to claim the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard? Su Du pointed at Su Yan beside him and said, if you are not convinced, there is still a chance. When you have cultivated to the level of your sect's first seat, you can go and seek revenge on Chu Xiu. Su Yan, who was beside him, nodded. It was not easy for Su Du to say something sensible this time. However, at that moment, Su Du added, however, your sect's first seat's abilities are not that great. It will be quite difficult for him to seek revenge when he has cultivated to his level. Su Yan immediately glared at Su Du. However, Su Du turned his head to the side as if he did not see it. The Great Light Temple did not dare to make another move after being beaten up by Chu Xiu. Everyone present had seen Chu Xiu's might. Even those who had a grudge against Chu Xiu did not dare to show up at that moment. At that moment, on the other side, there were only 4 people left. They were Fang Qi Shao, Chu Xiu, Nie Donglu, and Yan Fian. A duel was a very simple matter. However, 7th young Master Fang looked at Yan Fian opposite him. He shrugged his shoulders helplessly and said, Miss Yan, why don't you just admit defeat? I don't hit women, especially when you are so beautiful and I am so handsome. If the two of us were to fight fiercely here, wouldn't it be a bit of a wet blanket? Why don't you admit defeat and I will treat you to a meal after this? The Yu Maiden Palace is far away in Wuxia, so you definitely have not tasted the delicacies of the Western region. When we come to the Western region, I will treat you to roasted lamb legs and lamb chops. Oh yes, there will also be good lamb kidneys. That is a great tonic. Last time, I went to a small tribe to rob. Ah no, I borrowed a few holy sheep that were fed with elixirs. The taste was not ordinary. Everyone present was speechless. This Fang Qishao was really not an ordinary person. Treating Cloud Sword Fairy, Yan Fian to eat lamb kidneys? Only Fang Qishao could think of such a showy move. The warrior at the unity of heaven and man realm from Sword King City covered his face in pain. He felt that Sword King City's face had been thrown away by Fang Qishao. If it was not for Fang Qishao's unparalleled talent in swordsmanship, he would have been hung on the city tower as a sacrifice several times by the people of Sword King City. On the opposite side, Yan Fian raised her delicate eyebrows. As an outstanding disciple of the 5 major sword sects, she understood Fang Qishao. She knew that he was such a person, so she did not talk nonsense with Fang Qishao. She raised the Yu Maiden sword in her hand and rushed forward. She knew that she was not a match for Fang Qishao, but as a swordsman, she could not take the initiative to admit defeat. The Yu Maiden Palace would not allow her to do so. Chapter 390. Everyone had their own characteristics. Chu Xiu also discovered that Fang Qishao's characteristic was not that he was talkative or amusing, but that he was narcissistic, extremely narcissistic. If one were to evaluate him sincerely, Fang Qishao was definitely not ugly, but he was not handsome either. At least, he was not even close to being handsome. He was just an average person. Not to mention Lu Fengxian's appearance, Chu Xiu dared to confidently say that he was definitely much more handsome than Fang Qishao. But Fang Qishao himself did not think so. He really thought that his handsomeness could make everyone fall for him. But it was very clear that Yan Fian did not really buy Fang Qishao's looks. The Yu Maiden sword in her hand was as ethereal as the clouds, and she continuously stabbed towards Fang Qishao. She was beautiful, and her sword's momentum was even more graceful, so beautiful that it was murderous. Of course, Yan Fian also knew that the reason she could fully use her Yu Maiden sword technique to attack Fang Qishao was completely because Fang Qishao did not block or counterattack. Fang Qishao's own swordsmanship cultivation could be said to be terrifying, and he was a realm higher than Yan Fian. If he really attacked, Yan Fian might not even be able to block 10 of Fang Qishao's moves. And now, Fang Qishao did not draw his sword. He was just casually dodging. While dodging, Fang Qishao looked at Yan Fian and said helplessly, "Miss Yan, I said that I don't hit women. You can't beat me, so what's the point of continuing to fight?" Yan Fian frowned and said, "Fang Qishao, are you insulting me? As a swordsman, if you don't draw your sword when you know you can't win, although it is rational, it is cowardice. Your swordsmanship cultivation is far above mine. Don't you even understand this?" Fang Qishao muttered in a low voice, "Those who know they can't win are idiots." The Sword King City martial artist was about to go mad with anger. He shouted, "Fang Qishao, if you don't act now, don't even think about leaving Sword King City for the next year." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Fang Qishao shook his head helplessly and said, "Boring, really boring." Although he said it was meaningless, Fang Qishao's expression turned serious. The mischievous smile on Fang Qishao's face disappeared completely. The sword that he had been carrying on his back was finally unsheathed. The people of Sword King City were very persistent with their swords. In order to reach the state of being one with the world, most of the disciples of Sword King City kept their swords in their hands even when they were eating or sleeping. They wanted to reach that extreme state of being one with the sword. However, Fang Qishao was an exception. He carried his sword loosely on his back and wrapped it in a piece of linen. It seemed like he didn't care about it at all. This didn't mean that Fang Qishao didn't care about his sword. Instead, Fang Qishao had already reached the state of being one with the sword. The sword was like his fingers and arms. Of course, he would let it go as he pleased. Fang Qishao's sword was a very simple black longsword. It looked like it was cast from black iron. One could see traces of red on its surface. It looked like rust, but at the same time, it wasn't rust. When the sword slashed out, it seemed like the brilliance between the heavens and the earth was completely enveloped by Fang Qishao's sword. When the sword came out, there was no sun. An ordinary person would first comprehend the sword's momentum before comprehending the sword's intent. Finally, they would be able to lay out their own sword path. However, 7th young Master Fang was different. He had already comprehended the true essence of the way of the sword at such a young age. When he slashed out with his sword, it already contained 30% of the charm of the way of the sword. The surrounding power of heaven and earth had already been completely absorbed by 7th young master Feng's sword. In the darkness, the boundless sword aura enveloped Yan Fian. The aura really made Yan Fian feel terror. Feng Qishao said that he didn't want to hit a woman. However, as long as he truly drew his sword, that mischievous and seemingly unruly fellow would become one of the most terrifying swordsmen in the world. Yan Fian frowned. The Yu maiden sword in her hand shone brightly. She had already erupted her power to the extreme. As an outstanding disciple of the younger generation of the 5 major sword sects, Yan Fian and Feng Qishao knew each other. However, they had never officially fought before. This was because she was still young at that time, while Feng Qishao had already become famous at a young age. He was already in the top 5 of the Longhu leaderboard. Those who were qualified to compete with him were only elites like Zhang Qingzhen of the Celestial Master Abode and Zhong Xian of the Great Light Temple. Therefore, Yan Fian knew that Feng Qishao was very strong. However, she had never thought that Feng Qishao would be strong to this extent. The Yu maiden sword in Yan Fian's hand was raised. The sword's radiance drew on the power of the heavens and the earth. Although it was slight, it was extremely sharp and indestructible. The cloud sword daybreak illuminated 1,000 miles. The Yu maiden sword mantra's sword momentum was naturally formed. In Yan Fian's hands, it was definitely not weak. However, it was a pity that her opponent was Feng Qishao. Feng Qishao had already comprehended the essence of the sword path. The boundless sword aura pressed down and instantly extinguished the cloud sword daybreak, causing it to no longer be able to change its radiance. The long sword in Feng Qishao's hand pressed down. In an instant, the boundless sword momentum absorbed all the surrounding qi of the heavens and the earth. It turned into a sword aura that was dozens of feet long and fell down. It affected half of the ring, and its power could be said to be astonishing. A martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm could only draw and borrow some of the power of the heavens and the earth. However, Feng Qishao was using his own sword momentum to draw and move the heavens and the earth. The power created was already second only to that of a martial arts grandmaster. The boundless and huge sword aura suddenly smashed down. Yan Fian's figure was pushed back. However, that huge sword aura turned into a sweeping momentum and sealed off all the paths around her, leaving her with nowhere to retreat. The slender Yu maiden sword in Yan Fian's hand suddenly exploded with a boundless sharp sword aura. As her sword momentum flowed, it turned into a sword aura storm. Under Feng Qishao's huge sword aura, she bitterly resisted. Her figure retreated step by step. Finally, after she retreated to the edge of the ring, she was finally able to cancel out this sword attack from Feng Qishao. However, before Yan Fian could heave a sigh of relief, Feng Qishao once again struck out with his sword. It was a very simple sword attack. The long sword was raised horizontally and stabbed out. It was the same posture that all martial artists learned when they first learned the sword. It was simple and direct. However, it was such a simple stab that seemed to transcend the boundaries of space and time. Under the trajectory of that sword momentum, all the power was sucked out. The distance between Feng Qishao and Yan Fian was rapidly shrinking. However, Yan Fian did not move. Instead, her eyes revealed a deep sense of shock. When Feng Qishao stabbed out with his sword, he did not slash a person, nor did he slash heaven and earth, but karma. From the moment the sword stabbed out, stabbing Yan Fian was the effect, and the process of the sword was the cause. There must be an effect before there could be a cause. This completely illogical way of the sword was comprehended by Feng Qishao. No matter what Yan Fian did to resist, she would still lose. Just when Feng Qishao's sword was less than 10 feet away from her, Yan Fian took a step back and fell off the ring. With a disappointed expression, she said, "I've lost." At the last moment, Yan Fian still retreated because there was no difference between retreating and not retreating. She was destined to be unable to withstand this sword attack. 3 moves. Feng Qishao only used 3 moves to defeat Yan Fian. They were both in the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger roll, but the gap was so big that it was shocking. Everyone present was also silent. The feeling that Fang Qishao gave people was really too divisive, and they could not react at all. His actions were also extremely unreliable. Only the Sword King city had the strength to protect Fang Qishao, allowing him to grow steadily to his current realm. It was true that 90% of Fang Qishao's current cultivation level was due to his own talent, but the remaining 10% was the protection that the Sword King city had given to Fang Qishao. Without this protection, a fallen Sword Dao genius would no longer be a genius, but a dead person. Chapter 391. Fang Qishao had defeated Yan Fian of the Yunnu Palace in 3 moves. This was no longer a one-sided suppression, but a battle between 2 people of different levels. Mr. Liu of the Phaseless Demon sect had a serious look in his eyes. There were crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the righteous sects, and they were indeed stronger than the diabolism. Mr. Liu himself had already reached the realm of half-step grandmaster. As long as he was given an opportunity, he was confident that he could immediately step into the realm of martial arts grandmaster. However, if Mr. Liu were to fight with Fang Qishao now, he was not confident that he could defeat Fang Qishao. On the other hand, on the side of the diabolism, Chu Xiu of the Yinma clan was not bad, but Chu Xiu was only at the realm of 5 qis collecting in origin, and had not reached the realm of oneness of heaven and man. Mr. Liu did not know if Chu Xiu could defeat Fang Qishao. There was also Yi Tianxie of the Bright Demon clan. He had refined the inner elixir of the Blood Flood Dragon and successfully cultivated the Heart Sutra of the Blood Flood Dragon as a human. He was not easy to deal with, but he had not reached the realm of oneness of heaven and man. The martial artists of diabolism were on the wane. People like Chu Xiu and Yi Tianxie were already considered to be at the top. However, when looking at the righteous sects, especially the Taoist and Buddhist sects, both Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian were outstanding figures that were hard to come by in 1,000 years. Compared to them, the disadvantage of diabolism was really not small. At this time, Wuxia, who was standing next to Mr. Liu, seemed to have sensed his thoughts. He transmitted his voice, "Liu Jin, don't be so pessimistic. No orthodoxy can always be strong. The general trend of the world has its ups and downs. Because of the rise of the Kunlun devil cult, our diabolism has been glorious for hundreds of years. Although we are now at a low point, who dares to say that we will always be at a low point? As long as the diabolism is not destroyed, there will always be a chance for us to rise again. Since ancient times, the only orthodoxies that could truly stand at the pinnacle were Taoism, Buddhism, and devil. Now, this bunch of swordsmen want to stir up trouble when they see that our devil Dao is on the decline. They are still far from it." Mr. Liu nodded. Perhaps it was precisely because there were countless people like Wei Shuya in the diabolism that they could continue to survive in this environment where the diabolism was suppressed to the extreme. In the past, Prince Anil had once asked Mr. Liu, "The Kunlun devil cult has been destroyed for hundreds of years. What's the point of persisting in these things?" At that time, Mr. Liu did not answer. Perhaps to Mr. Liu and the current Phaseless Demon sect, their loyalty was not to the Kunlun devil cult, but to the flourishing age of the devil path. At that moment, in the arena, the match between Fang Qishao and Yan Fian had ended. Everyone was looking at Chu Xiu and Ye Donglu. The truly interesting match was between these two. Chu Xiu and Ye Donglu could be said to be old rivals and enemies. The grudge between them was recorded on the Longhu leaderboard. It was not something that happened in a day or two. However, Ye Donglu and Chu Xiu never saw each other again. However, the grudge between them had not been put down. Ye Donglu became famous at a young age. He was also a person with great luck. His father, Renlong, had left a strong reputation for him. Just the reputation of the morgue was enough for him to benefit from. After that, Ye Donglu became the disciple of the Northern Yen martial arts tycoon, Han Baxian, and received all the teachings of Han Baxian. With the teachings of 2 martial arts masters on the Wind Cloud leaderboard, it could be considered as making up for some of the shortcomings in his own strength. On the other hand, Chu Xiu's experience was even more legendary. From a wandering martial artist to a ruthless killer of the Blue Dragon Society, he then entered the Guanzhong torture room and became the Guanxi penal officer in a short period of time. He held great power in his hands. This kind of resume was enough to look down on the entire Jianghu. So overall, Chu Xiu and Ye Donglio's growth was completely different. One was the standard elite of an aristocratic family and had a genius history of growing up with great luck. On the other hand, Chu Xiu had a standard background in the wilderness. With a sword and a saber, he had fought his way through a storm of blood to reach his current realm and achievements. It was hard to say who was stronger between the two, but because of the grudge between Ye Donglu and Chu Xiu, the two would have to fight it out in the end. This also made the people present a little excited, and they were ready to watch a good show. In fact, now that Fang Qishao was fully deserving of the first place, it didn't matter who was second or third. If it were someone else, it might just be a spar and be done with it. But now that it was Chu Xiu and Ye Donglu, with the grudge between them, it was obviously not so easy to settle. Ye Donglu looked at Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "Brother Chu, you just went through a few big battles. Do you want to rest for a while? Don't worry, I won't take advantage of you." As he said that, Ye Donglu stretched out his hand and pointed, making a magnanimous gesture. The grudge between Chu Xiu and Ye Donglu had long been formed, but in reality, he hadn't had many interactions with Ye Donglu. However, regardless of whether it was Chu Xiu or Ye Donglu, they had all heard a lot about each other from others. Chu Xiu's evaluation of Ye Donglu was very simple. He was a scheming person. Even an ordinary sentence from him usually contained several meanings. Just like now, Ye Donglu had asked Chu Xiu to rest on the surface, but under the current situation, could Chu Xiu really rest? Fang Qishao had already smoothly dealt with Yan Fian. Only Chu Xiu was left to fight with Ye Donglu again. There were so many warriors on floating Jade Mountain watching, and there were also martial arts masters from various sects waiting at the side. Could a junior warrior like Chu Xiu really go to the side to rest and recover his vital qi before making a move? There were so many people watching him, Chu Xiu, recover his strength alone? Even if Chu Xiu was thick-skinned enough to ignore the gazes of these people and recover his vital qi, people would still label Chu Xiu as a timid and cautious person. Although it wasn't a derogatory term, it was still not something good. If Chu Xiu couldn't take the provocation and made a move now, it would be in line with Ye Donglio's intentions. He was a hypocrite, but he was also a real villain. Han Ba first taught him that the easiest way to solve problems was to solve them with one's own fists. His father, Renlong, also taught him that the winner takes all. As long as you can defeat your enemy, using any means is reasonable. Ye Donglu didn't have the confidence to win against Chu Xiu at his peak, but now that he was facing Chu Xiu, who had expended a lot of energy, Ye Donglu still had some confidence. In any case, no matter what Chu Xiu chose, Ye Donglu would be the one to benefit. Looking at Ye Donglu, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Ye Donglu, you're still the same. Although you've become Han Ba's disciple, you haven't learned his domineering ways." Ye Donglu smiled and said, "Domineering ways? I don't need that kind of thing for now. My master walks the path of dominance, and I walk the path of the king. Can't I?" Chu Xiu laughed coldly when he heard that. "Ye Donglu, you really are full of yourself. Walk the path of the king? You're just a young master of the Memorial Hall. Do you still think you're a northern Yen prince?" Ye Donglio's words were indeed arrogant. The Memorial Hall's strength wasn't considered the top among the people and the 6 gangs, yet he still dared to say he wanted to walk the path of the king? Do the nobles and generals have guts? Ye Donglu stood with his hands behind his back and said lightly, "Chu Xiu, you were born in the wilderness, and now you don't even have the courage to do so?" Chu Xiu raised the Sky Demon Dance in his hand and pointed it at Ye Donglu. He said in a deep voice, "That's not bad. However, between the two of us, you are the one who looks more like a king. Don't you think that's a little inauspicious?" Nye Renlong was a standard peasant, but Nye Donglu wasn't. The young master of the Memorial Hall was not a peasant, no matter where he was. Of course, Chu Xiu couldn't be bothered to waste time with Nye Donglu. Since Nie Donglu believed in his so-called way of the king, then Chu Xiu would teach him a lesson. Whether it was the way of the king or the way of dominance, it all had to be carried out with one's fists and the knife in one's hand. Demonic aura gathered on the sky demon dance. The demonic aura was so dense that it had even condensed into the shadow of a demon god on the blade, making people feel abnormally terrified. Seeing this, Han Tingyi and the other people from the 5 major sword sects frowned. It was not because of anything else, but because Chu Xiu's demonic art was too eye-catching. In fact, there was nothing strange about demonic arts. In Jianghu, the martial arts of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism were the most widely spread, especially the martial arts of Diabolism. Although there were flaws such as rapid learning, unstable foundation, and excessive killing, the power of demonic arts was very strong, especially when used as a trump card when fighting for one's life. Therefore, even some righteous martial artists actually secretly practiced demonic arts as a trump card. However, this was the World Sword Sect Conference, and the goal of the 5 major sword sects was to target the demonic arts. Now that Chu Xiu revealed his demonic arts, they couldn't help but be sensitive. If Chu Xiu didn't come from the Guanzhong torture room, had a clean background, and had so many Buddhist techniques, Chu Xiu would have been invited to have tea by now. At this moment, Chu Xiu's devil saber had slashed down, and the fiend god's image that had been condensed from his saber's aura had warped as well. Along with Chu Xiu's saber, a wave of sonic booms resounded. The devil saber that was born from the hell of Avicii had been utilized to its limits by Chu Xiu, and a form of divinity had even appeared when his saber descended. In the face of Chu Xiu's stunning blade, Nie Donglu didn't block it directly. Instead, he retreated first, preparing to use it to hold Chu Xiu back. Chu Xiu's only advantage was his own combat power. However, Chu Xiu's previous battles with the Great Light Temple's martial artists had exhausted nearly half of his inner strength. Nie Donglu didn't believe that Chu Xiu could still control such a powerful explosive power. Therefore, he planned to hold it back until Chu Xiu was truly exhausted. Unfortunately, Chu Xiu's moves were always quick. If Nie Donglu wanted to hold Chu Xiu back, he would have to see if he had enough strength. When Chu Xiu's blade fell, the vital energy defense Nie Donglu set up was like paper in front of Chu Xiu. It was easily torn apart by Chu Xiu's blade. At this moment, Nie Donglu stretched out a hand and pressed it directly on Chu Xiu's long blade. Earth energy exploded, and the demonic flames were instantly extinguished. Memorial Manor's secret technique, Heaven and Earth Cloud Hand. Chapter 392. Although Nie Donglu had a great reputation in the Jianghu, he had not really fought many times. He had always been famous for his scheming, which was why he was ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Now, after years of painstaking cultivation and becoming Han Baxian's disciple, everyone finally saw Nie Donglu's true strength. Heaven and earth above the clouds, grasping the world. The powerful palm power rippled out layer by layer, tearing apart the demonic aura on Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance and attacking Chu Xiu along the blade. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Nie Donglu's accumulated strength was not weak, and the gathering loyalty Manor's secret heaven and earth above the clouds hand was really strange. It grasped the universe, and any Gangqi power that was caught by the heaven and earth above the clouds hand would be torn apart by the strange ripples. However, in terms of pure strength, Chu Xiu had never been afraid of anyone. The boundless demonic aura on the heavenly demon dance combined with the demonic aura, and Chu Xiu's eyes also turned red in an instant. In an instant, Chu Xiu had already stepped into the state of selflessness. Demonic aura shot up to the sky, and demonic flames swept out. The long blade broke free from Nie Donglu's grasp, and with a surging momentum, it slashed at Nie Donglu. The boundless demonic aura combined with the demonic aura condensed into a hideous shadow of a demon god around Chu Xiu. As Chu Xiu's blade slashed down, it let out a shrill wail of evil spirits. Nie Donglu's figure retreated quickly, and his expression changed slightly. The reason why he had the confidence to fight Chu Xiu was because Chu Xiu had previously gone through the Temple of Great Light's continuous battles against several 5 Chi's origin realm experts who were not weak. He had already expended a large portion of his inner energy. But who would have thought that Chu Xiu would still be able to unleash such a level of power? Just how deep was Chu Xiu's accumulation? Nie Donglio's hands danced in succession. The heaven and earth cloud-reaching hands, which had originally seemed fierce and imposing, now became profound and soft. Yin and Yang, the two extremes of yin and yang, the heaven and earth, the two completely different powers fluctuated between Nie Donglio's hands, dividing and canceling out Chu Xiu's violent saber force. However, at this moment, the killing intent in Chu Xiu's eyes receded and a mysterious aura appeared around him. The trajectory of Nie Donglio's heaven and earth cloud hand was within Chu Xiu's grasp. Heaven's sun gazing at air. In the past, Chu Xiu could not use the heaven's sun gazing at air in such an intense fight. But recently, although Chu Xiu's cultivation of the heaven's sun gazing at air had not improved, he had become much more familiar with it. Just like now, he could concentrate his mental strength to the extreme in battle and use the heaven's sun gazing at air. The heaven and earth cloud hand, a secret technique passed down in honor manner, was very strange. It could be both hard and soft. Just like just now, it could shatter Chu Xiu's blade power head-on. Now, it could split heaven and earth and block Chu Xiu's evil blood blade power. However, in the eyes of Chu Xiu's heaven's sun gazing at air, Nie Donglio's next attack trajectory was already clear to him. Chu Xiu's blade power slowed down, but it was no longer continuous like a violent storm. Instead, he stared at the trajectory of Nie Donglio's attack. The moment Nie Donglio's heaven and earth cloud hand was about to be used, he blocked his opponent's attack trajectory and completely disrupted his rhythm. After more than 10 strikes, Nie Donglio's heaven and earth cloud hand's trajectory had been completely disrupted by Chu Xiu. This made him so frustrated that he almost vomited blood. Every move of his actually seemed to be taking the initiative to collide with Chu Xiu's saber intent. He was completely unable to execute the heaven and earth cloud reaching hands formation. This kind of situation was simply strange to the extreme. It was just like how his father had fed him moves when they were sparring in battle. If one didn't cultivate the heaven and earth cloud reaching hand to the extreme, it was simply impossible to do this. However, Nie Donglu was certain that the Nie family's heaven and earth cloud hand would never be leaked. Tribute Village's heaven and earth cloud hand was created by Nie Renlong based on some ancient techniques he had obtained in the past. In the entire Tribute Village, only he and his father Nie Renlong knew of it, so there was absolutely no possibility of the secret being leaked. Nie Donglu did not know what was going on with Chu Xiu. However, seeing that Chu Xiu's blade power was getting stronger and stronger, and the blade power was getting fiercer and fiercer, constantly approaching him, Nie Donglu snorted. His body suddenly exploded with a blinding golden light, as if the sun had descended upon him. He punched out, illuminating the world. The Northern Yen martial arts tycoon Han Baxian practiced the vast Yang 9 Extremes mysterious skill, which could be considered a half-self-created martial art. In the past, Han Baxian first practiced the body refining skill that he had exchanged with the Northern Yen imperial court. However, Han Baxian later became obsessed with martial arts and combined the 9 body refining skills that he had obtained from various places. After they were combined, it became the vast Yang 9 Extremes mysterious skill. The vast Yang 9 Extremes mysterious skill was ferocious and domineering. It was not only a body refining skill, but also a mysterious skill that accumulated a lot of inner strength. Moreover, Han Baxian had also integrated his own martial arts moves into it, making it even more powerful when used together. Previously, Han Baxian used weapons. He was from the Northern Yen military, so he naturally used heavy weapons. He had used guns, halberd, and even the green dragon crescent blade. However, Han Baxian later discovered that no weapon was as practical as his pair of iron fists. He gave up on weapons and used his fists to fight his enemies. However, he also integrated his use of weapons into the vast Yang 9 Extremes mysterious skill, just like the punch that Nie Donglu threw. The light of the vast Yang sun shrouded him, but in reality, it was a heavy hammer. It was heavy and powerful, with infinite power. The dazzling light collided with Chu Xiu's blade. The light of the vast Yang scorching sun burst out in an instant, eventually tangling with the devil qi and dissipating. Violent gang qi burst out, and even the ring shook twice. That was not all. Nie Donglio's figure did not stop at all. He stood straight and threw a punch. It was like a straight spear, bursting forth with unparalleled momentum. Its speed was extremely fast, and it was also extremely ferocious. Seeing Nie Donglio's actions, Chu Xiu's lips curled into a cold smile. Did Nie Donglu want to fight in close combat with him? Unfortunately, ever since Chu Xiu cultivated the great Vajra divine powers, he no longer had any weaknesses. Even in close combat, Chu Xiu's accumulated inner force and the physical strength brought by the great Vajra divine powers were no weaker than Nie Donglu, who cultivated the vast Yang Nine Extremes mysterious skill. He sheathed his blade and formed a seal. Among the complicated hand seals, majestic Gang Qi spread out. The Wisdom Fist seal, useless in heaven and earth. The area within a radius of more than 30 meters became Chu Xiu's Gang Qi domain. Nie Donglio's punch crashed into the Gang Qi domain, like a spear piercing into sticky water, its momentum waning again and again. The spear focused on momentum, and after piercing out, it moved forward with indomitable will. However, under Chu Xiu's Wisdom Fist seal, this momentum had already dissipated, and its power was reduced by half. Stepping forward, Chu Xiu formed a complete Aquarius seal in his hand. In an instant, a dazzling light burst out and collided with Nie Donglio's punch, instantly forcing him to take a step back. Stepping forward again, Chu Xiu formed a sun will seal in his hand. The 5 elements rotated into one, growing and multiplying endlessly. A powerful Gang Qi burst out, forcing Nie Donglu to take another step back. Chu Xiu's body was surrounded by golden Buddhist light. One after another, Buddhist mudras landed. Their power was incomparably ferocious. They were actually suppressing Nie Donglu. The power was several times stronger than when Nie Donglu had unleashed the vast Yang Nine Extremes mysterious skill. Everyone present had a strange look on their faces. Nie Donglu was looking for trouble. After all, Chu Xiu had fought several times in the Jianghu, and everyone knew a little about his martial arts. When it came to power, there were few warriors of the same level who could compare with Chu Xiu. Of course, Nie Donglu could only blame his bad luck. He had finally become Han Baxian's disciple and raised his cultivation to the extreme. He did not expect to meet such a monster like Chu Xiu. Even after fighting several battles, he could still burst out with power of this level. Some of the monks from the Great Light Temple below also had ugly expressions, because that was how Chu Xiu had treated them previously. He had unleashed a barrage of attacks without any reason, completely crushing them in terms of power. He had completely overwhelmed them and finally blasted them off the arena. However, Nie Donglu was obviously not one of those monks from the Great Light Temple. After being suppressed by Chu Xiu for several moves, Nie Donglio's eyes revealed a cold look. He had underestimated Chu Xiu this time. After not seeing him for so long, his luck was not bad, but Chu Xiu's growth was even more terrifying. If this continued, he was afraid that before he could exhaust Chu Xiu to death, he would be crushed and defeated by Chu Xiu in public. It was not that Nie Donglu could not accept failure. In fact, he had lost many times in his life. Previously, he lost to a woman, and he was even ridiculed by the warriors of the Northern Yen for a long time. But now, in the World Sword Sect Conference, under the watchful eyes of everyone, if he was crushed and defeated by Chu Xiu like this, it would be a huge blow to Nie Donglio's reputation. So at this moment, Nie Donglu had already made up his mind to fight. Victory or defeat was right in front of him. Although he was full of schemes, he would not hesitate after calculating. Instead, he was extremely decisive. Since he had decided to fight, he no longer worried about being injured or holding back. Before Chu Xiu's fist landed, a blood mist rose around Nie Donglio's body. He had actually burned his blood essence, which made everyone's eyebrows twitch. Burning blood essence, a method that hurt others and oneself, was usually only used when it came to a life or death situation. Now that Nie Donglu had even used this method in the ring, it was obvious that he was really angry and had been forced to the extreme. Han Ting, who was the referee on the high platform, wanted to intervene when he saw this scene. However, he resisted the urge. Anyway, it was already the last 2 rounds. If they wanted to fight, then let them fight. Anyway, it did not affect the overall situation. The goal of the 5 major sword sects was diabolism, not to be a mediator between these junior warriors. Chapter 393. Seeing that Nie Donglu was even willing to burn his blood essence, Chu Xiu could not help but frown and take 2 steps back. Nie Donglu's desire to win was not ordinary. It was just a competition in the ring, and Han Tingyi and the others were watching. He could not really kill anyone, so why would he risk his life? Of course, for Chu Xiu, he still had the chance to kill someone, but not now, but in the future. But now that Nie Donglu had decided to go all out, how could he let Chu Xiu leave so easily? Thick blood essence gathered in Nie Donglu's arms. He pointed out with his fingers, and in an instant, 2 blood swords slashed out. But the strangest thing was that the 2 blood swords were wrapped in a thick layer of golden vigor. The 2 blood swords were like 2 dragons, twisting agilely and tearing apart all the vigor around Chu Xiu as they slashed towards him. The 2 blood swords condensed from Nie Donglu's blood essence and vigor were not strange, but they could be said to be magical. Even if Chu Xiu attacked with all his might, he would not be able to completely block them. The vigor was torn apart by the 2 blood swords. Chu Xiu held the Dugu seal in his hand, unmoving like a mountain and invincible. When the 2 blood swords collided with the Dugu seal, blood essence exploded and golden light filled the air, directly shattering Chu Xiu's Dugu seal. Nie Donglu's face was pale, but his speed did not change in the slightest. Just as Chu Xiu's Dugu seal was shattered, he had already closed in. Actually, the 2 blood swords were not taught to him by Han Baxian, nor was it taught by his father, Nie Renlong. It was an incomplete sword technique that Nie Donglu accidentally obtained. This sword technique originated from the Devil Dao, and the power of the complete version was unimaginable. After Nie Donglu accidentally obtained this sword technique, he gave it to his father, Nie Renlong. In the end, Nie Renlong came to the conclusion that the owner of this sword technique should have been from the Kunlun devil cult. It was very likely that he was a devil emissary or even a devil lord of the Kunlun devil cult. However, the damage to the sword technique was too great. Even if Nie Renlong had taken action, he could only extract this move from it. Using one's vital energy and blood as the marrow, essential energy as the bones, and astral energy as the skin, the power of these 2 swords were extremely powerful. Even Chu Xiu's Dugu-in would not be able to withstand an attack of this level. Nie Donglu stepped on a golden light, and his entire body was covered in a powerful vigor. When he punched, his aura was raised to the extreme, as if it had the power to shatter a mountain. In the beginning, Nie Donglu had wanted to exhaust Chu Xiu to death. After all, Chu Xiu had already used up a lot of energy. However, in the end, Nie Donglu realized that Chu Xiu had accumulated a terrifying amount of energy. After feeling that he could not beat Chu Xiu even if he used his last trump card, Nie Donglu immediately prepared to retreat. Unfortunately, Chu Xiu did not want to give him this chance. The moment Nie Donglu retreated, Chu Xiu moved as well. However, Chu Xiu did not move. He formed a seal with his hands, and as his fingers tapped, there was an explosion of thunder. Outer Lion Seal. It was like the roar of thunder. Nie Donglu was not prepared at all, and his earth energy dissipated by Chu Xiu's Outer Lion Seal. Blood flowed from his ears. However, the Outer Lion Seal had a limited effect on Nie Donglu. After all, his physical cultivation was still there. After cultivating the vast Yang 9 Extreme's mysterious skill, his physical strength still had a certain degree of defense against martial arts like the Outer Lion Seal. But before Nie Donglu could react, Chu Xiu's eyes had already turned into a bottomless abyss, pulling Nie Donglu's entire mind into it. Extinguishing sky, destroying earth, soul-shifting technique. Secret mental techniques were definitely a minority type in the Jianghu, and those that were related to them were all described as evil and ruthless. Chu Xiu's martial arts had always been firm, fierce, and imposing. Now, he had suddenly used a mental secret technique. Not only did Nie Donglu not react, but everyone present also did not react in time. Originally, with Nie Donglio's physical cultivation and strong qi and blood, he still had a certain degree of resistance against secret mental techniques. However, he had used a secret technique to burn his blood essence, causing his blood essence to be depleted. Now, he was hit in an instant. His mind fell into a bottomless abyss. Nie Donglu struggled with all his might, and his mental strength was almost stretched to the limit. However, just as he broke free from the influence of the soul-shifting skill, what greeted him was a punch from Chu Xiu. It was the annihilating heaven and earth, destroying oblivion-killing fist with infinite murderous intent. Han Tingyi frowned. They could really fight in the ring, but they could not allow anyone to die. So, he was already prepared to stop them. However, Nie Donglu still had the strength to fight. At the critical moment, he directly exploded all his Gang Qi, condensing it into a shield in front of him. The golden Gang Qi shield was directly shattered by Chu Xiu's punch, and Nie Donglu was also blasted off the ring by Chu Xiu's punch. He spat out large mouthfuls of blood, but his life was clearly not in danger. Seeing this, Han Tingyi did not continue to attack. Looking at Chu Xiu, who was panting a little but not too injured in the ring, Nie Donglio's heart was filled with unwillingness, but he still wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and returned to his seat. He was not someone who could not afford to lose. At this moment, Nie Donglu also understood that he was still the young master of the Memorial Manor, but Chu Xiu was no longer the Chu Xiu of the past. In the past, Nie Donglio's strength was superior to Chu Xiu's, but now, he was crushed by Chu Xiu even though he had resorted to trickery. He had lost completely. At that time, Chu Xiu had no backing. He was just a lone cultivator that Nie Donglu could casually crush to death. Now, Chu Xiu had the support of the Guanzhong torture room and had become the Guanzhong penal officer with great power. Although his status was still not as high as the heir of the Memorial Manor, he was not someone he could casually crush. After all, in terms of power, the Guanzhong torture room was much stronger than the Memorial Manor. Of course, what Nie Donglu did not know was that Chu Xiu had more than just the Guanzhong torture room behind him. The power hidden beneath was something that Nie Donglu did not even dare to think about. Of course, Nie Donglu also regretted not forcing his father to use the power of the Memorial Manor to kill Chu Xiu. However, regret was the most useless emotion. This emotion only flashed in Nie Donglio's heart for a moment before he forcibly extinguished it. No one present was surprised that Chu Xiu had defeated Nie Donglu. On the contrary, to most people, this was a very normal thing. To the people of the Jianghu, the reason why Chu Xiu was able to make a name for himself on the Longhu list was because he had fought through many bloody battles. The people of the Jianghu could say that Chu Xiu was vicious, and that he was ruthless. However, no one would say that Chu Xiu did not live up to his reputation and was not worthy of his ranking on the Longhu list. This was a kind of confidence, a confidence obtained from countless bloody battles and slaughters. On the other hand, Nie Donglio's reputation was actually not weaker than Chu Xiu's. In fact, it was even greater than Chu Xiu's. After all, Chu Xiu was only the penal officer of Guangdong, and not the definite successor of the Guanzhong torture room. However, everyone in the Jianghu knew that Nie Donglu was the successor of the Memorial Manor. As long as Nie Donglu did not die, he would definitely take over the Memorial Manor in the future. Therefore, Nie Donglu actually had the halo of the entire Memorial Manor. Without this identity, Nie Donglio's reputation would definitely be far inferior to Chu Xiu's. Now that the two of them were fighting, most people had already expected that the winner would most likely be Chu Xiu. Now that they looked at it, it was just as they had expected. Now that the arena had reached this stage, it was more or less enough. With Feng Qishao's strength and realm, he fully deserved to be number 1. Chu Xiu was number 2, and Nie Donglu was number 3. There was no need to continue fighting. Chu Xiu could also go down and heal his injuries now. Therefore, Han Tingyi just asked a routine question. Chu Xiu, do you still want to fight? Just when everyone thought that Chu Xiu would definitely take the initiative to admit defeat, Chu Xiu suddenly said, Of course I want to fight. Why wouldn't I? I don't have the habit of admitting defeat. Fang Qishao, who was standing at the side, said helplessly, Brother Chu, you still want to fight when you are already in this state? Don't tell me that you and that woman from the Yunnu Palace are also. Like a fairy, why are you talking about the dignity of a swordsman? Besides, you are using a saber, not a sword. Chapter 394. Fang Qishao's words made all the saber-wielding martial artists very unhappy. A swordsman needed dignity, but a saber-wielder did not? However, as the matter stood, what Fang Qishao said did make some sense. Now, not to mention that Chu Xiu had overexerted himself, even if Chu Xiu recovered to his peak, he would still not be able to defeat Fang Qishao. Since that was the case, what was the point of continuing to pester him? Looking at Fang Qishao, Chu Xiu said indifferently, Dignity is something that you fight for yourself, not something that you can just talk about. The only reason I want to fight again is because I'm not used to admitting defeat. Seeing that Chu Xiu was so insistent, Fang Qishao shrugged and said indifferently, As long as you're happy. Although he was too lazy to make a move, Fang Qishao felt that it would not take long to finish off Chu Xiu. Based on Chu Xiu's current state, he might be able to finish off Chu Xiu in less than 3 moves. However, although Fang Qishao was a little unreliable, he was still a kind person. Before he made a move, he specially asked, Do you need to recover your strength? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, No need, this is enough. Fang Qishao shrugged and said, All right, I won't stand on ceremony then. As he said that, Fang Qishao's hand was already on his sword. At the same time, Fang Qishao's seemingly mischievous expression turned serious. Fang Qishao was a very split person. His usual state and the state he was in when he held his sword were two different people. Fang Qishao had seen the power of Chu Xiu's attack just now. He had to admit that Chu Xiu was indeed not weak, but that was all. There was a big realm difference between them, and Chu Xiu could not beat him. However, even if Fang Qishao was confident that he could defeat Chu Xiu, even if Chu Xiu had consumed most of his strength, Fang Qishao still had to show his serious attitude when facing an opponent like Chu Xiu. If Fang Qishao was not serious, he would probably lose face in front of Chu Xiu. The seemingly ordinary sword in Fang Qishao's hand was unsheathed and stabbed out. The karma rotated. His person, his sword, and Chu Xiu seemed to have a strange connection. It was extremely magical. As soon as the fight started, Fang Qishao used the strongest karma swordsmanship that he could master. He also planned to end the battle with Chu Xiu quickly and then go back to rest. This move was not a sword technique, but had risen to the level of swordsmanship. Therefore, except for martial Dao masters, the people below could not understand it. Although they also felt that Fang Qishao was somewhat mysterious, it was obvious to them that the current Fang Qishao was not as powerful as when he fought with Yan Fian, where the sword aura spanned more than 30 meters and swept away everything. At this time, in the face of Fang Qishao's sword, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a faint excitement. Although Chu Xiu knew that he was no match for Fang Qishao, he insisted on fighting Fang Qishao. He did it for the sake of Fang Qishao's sword. Chu Xiu's mental strength rose to the extreme, and even his eyes became extremely empty. If one looked closely, one could even see the sun, moon, and stars rotating in Chu Xiu's eyes. The heaven's sun gazing at air skill was performed to the extreme by Chu Xiu. Ordinary people only saw the sword that Fang Qishao stabbed out casually, but what Chu Xiu saw was the powerful karma power. Fang Qishao's swordsmanship had an effect first, and then there would be a cause. This was a sword that was almost certain to hit its target. Other than forcefully resisting it, no one could break it. Even the grandmasters of swordsmanship in the past had never heard of such a strange swordsmanship. Only God knew how Fang Qishao had comprehended it. However, Chu Xiu's heaven's sun gazing at air skill was the opposite of Fang Qishao's swordsmanship. What he saw was the cause, and what he affected was the effect. Even if it was a sword that was certain to hit its target, Chu Xiu could see the trajectory of the sword, and then he could predict whether to dodge or counterattack. It could be said that what Chu Xiu saw with the heaven's sun gazing at air skill was the future, and it could be considered a type of karma. Therefore, when Fang Qishao stabbed out with his sword, Chu Xiu suddenly took a step in a direction. It was this step that made Fang Qishao's body stop abruptly, and a look of horror appeared in his eyes. His karma had been disrupted. He could not stab Chu Xiu with the sword. Ever since Fang Qishao had successfully comprehended the karma sword principle, even the grandmasters of swordsmanship in Sword King City had been full of praise for him. If they were in his shoes, they would not know how to break it apart from forcefully resisting it. Now, Fang Qishao did not know whether his karma sword principle had been broken by Chu Xiu or not. In any case, it had been disrupted. If he forcefully attacked again, it would be considered a real failure. Fang Qishao had a rare look of seriousness on his face. He had thought that he would be able to deal with Chu Xiu with a single sword strike, but he had not expected to encounter such a strange thing. The long sword in his hand changed its trajectory, and the karma changed. On the other side, Chu Xiu also took a step forward and changed his karma again. The two of them changed their trajectories back and forth. In the eyes of everyone present, Fang Qishao and Chu Xiu seemed to be fooling around. One person's sword momentum was slow, and he would stop midway, while the other person was simply walking around in the arena. However, they did not know that Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao's mental strength had been stretched to the extreme. The change in karma was a competition of their understanding of their own martial path and the strength of their mental strength. Chu Xiu had insisted on attacking Fang Qishao for this scene. From the moment Fang Qishao had used the karma sword principle to defeat Yan Fian, Chu Xiu had already had a plan. His heaven's sun gazing at air skill was extremely difficult to cultivate, and he could not even make progress in closed-door training. He could only hone it through killing. However, even so, the progress of the heaven's sun gazing at air skill was very slow. That was until Chu Xiu saw Fang Qishao's karma sword principle, which was actually somewhat similar to the heaven's sun gazing at air skill. They were both related to karma, so Chu Xiu wanted to use Fang Qishao's karma sword principle to hone his own power. As it turned out, Chu Xiu was right. Every time Fang Qishao changed the trajectory of his sword, Chu Xiu had to exert all his mental strength to perform the heaven's sun gazing at air skill. Under such pressure, although his mental strength was stretched to the extreme, the cultivation of the heaven's sun gazing at air skill improved visibly under the pressure. At this moment, the other martial Dao masters present revealed a hint of shock in their eyes. They had long known that Fang Qishao was talented, so they were not surprised that Fang Qishao displayed such a cultivation level. Now that Chu Xiu was also good at martial arts related to karma, he could even fight Fang Qishao to such a stalemate. Although they knew that the current Chu Xiu was definitely not Fang Qishao's match, it was clear that Chu Xiu had the potential to catch up to Fang Qishao's level. On the high platform, Cheng Tingshan from the Hidden Sword Villa said sourly, "Guanzhong torture room is really lucky. There are almost many talents in the past few generations. First, there was Chu Kuang's song that shook the Jianghu, and then there was Guan Xiu who turned the tide. This generation has Chu Xiu. This Guanzhong torture hall is really lucky." Among the 5 major sword sects, only the Hidden Sword Villa and the Yu Palace had weak potential. The Yu Palace was weak because they only accepted female disciples, and the Jianghu was dominated by men. Therefore, it could be said that the Yu Palace excluded 80% of the Jianghu people. Moreover, the Yu swordplay codex itself was also an unstable factor. As for the Hidden Sword Villa, the reason was even simpler. Although there were outsiders in the Hidden Sword Villa, the Qing clan had always been in charge of the villa. It was almost like an aristocratic family. As a result, the Hidden Sword Villa's secret techniques, as well as some of their treasured swords, could only be used by the Qing family. Even if outsiders were powerful, the Qing family would not be at ease to hand over the techniques and weapons to them. The Sword King City's martial Dao master suppressed his surprise and said indifferently, "So what if he's lucky? Potential doesn't equal strength." Fang Qishao won this round, and Fang Qixiao will continue to win in the future. Although Chu Xiu has potential, he can't threaten Fang Qixiao of Sword King City. Cheng Tingshan sneered and did not say anything. Although he did not like Sword King City, he would not say anything under such circumstances. After all, Fang Qixiao was a member of the 5 major sword sects, while Chu Xiu was a member of Guanzhong torture room. Even if the 5 major sword sects had conflicts with each other, they still had to unite against outsiders. At this time, Fang Qixiao had changed his sword 9 times in a row, but he did not manage to stab all 9 times before Chu Xiu's heaven's sun gazing at air saw through him. In the end, Fang Qixiao had no choice but to withdraw his sword. At this time, Chu Xiu's mental energy was almost at its limit. When he saw that Fang Qixiao still wanted to change his sword stance, Chu Xiu said directly, "There's no need to fight. I admit defeat." Everyone present was stunned. That's it? The two of them took a few steps forward inexplicably, and Chu Xiu admitted defeat without even making a move? Didn't you say that you're not used to admitting defeat? Why do you say it so skillfully now? But no matter what, the warriors below the stage were all dumbfounded, completely unable to make heads or tails of what was going on. Fang Qixiao put the long sword in his hand back on his back and glared at Chu Xiu fiercely. "So you're using me as your whetstone. I even wanted to treat you to a meal. Now, you should be the one treating me." Although Fang Qixiao was a little unruly, he was not an idiot. On the contrary, Fang Qixiao was very smart. When they were fighting just now, he was focused on the sword principle, so he did not notice it. It was only when Chu Xiu admitted defeat while sweating profusely that Fang Qixiao realized that although he had won this round, he had been tricked by Chu Xiu and helped him hone his martial arts. Winning or losing didn't matter to Chu Xiu from the beginning. Therefore, he was ungrateful and insisted on fighting with Fang Qixiao. He wanted to use Fang Qixiao to hone his heaven's sun gazing at air cultivation. Hearing this, Chu Xiu smiled and said, "It's not a problem to have a meal together, but I'm guessing that your seniors in Sword King City don't want us to be together. Moreover, it's also a problem if you can come out after returning to Sword King City. That fellow who I don't know if he's your senior brother or martial uncle will definitely report you." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.